Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined as always by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett. Hi, Matt.
Hey,
and
Dawn.
Our very special guest tonight is the Weston Hodkiewicz.
Oh my goodness.
Was I supposed to say Weston?
Absolutely. That's my name.
Oh, okay.
You can call me Weston.
It just came out.
I like it. I like it.
Wes Hod. How are you doing, Wes Hod? It's so good to see you.
I'm doing good. How are you guys on this wonderful evening?
Fantastic.
I'm great. I had a lovely day today. It was as a work retreat, so we got out of the house and did some stuff with coworkers. A little
Nice.
football bowling. They call it foaling, and everyone's bad at it, and it's beautiful. So I had a great day today.
You know, it's funny. I've seen the some of the videos and photos of that, and we were trying to figure out for our own group like a team building exercise. I was like, we got to go do that. Like, just the amount of like embarrassment that probably would happen with us completely missing the pins and stuff. I mean, that has to occur. So I've actually seen that a couple times. I want to check it out.
I'd recommend it. Even the people who could throw a really tight spiral, which is not myself. I'll be totally upfront about that. Even them, it's totally a crapshoot. Like if you can hit them, because it's fun. I'd recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, check it out.
Okay. So how does this work? You throw the ball instead of rolling it.
Yeah. Yes. So it's like it's kind of set up like beanbags or cornhole for those who are into that word. And so it's like, you know, you're like apart from each other by a distance of, I don't know, 25 feet or something. But instead of like where the cornhole boxes would be, it's like 10 bowling ball pins, you know, how the typical triangle setup, you know. And so you're throwing a football from across the room, trying to knock over bowling pins.
Okay, but then you introduced cornhole.
Well, because I feel like the way like if you look at it visually, it's kind of the same sort of.
Oh, I don't know
setup.
Anything about cornhole except that it's a weird name and I have no idea.
It's so terrible. I hate it.
I don't know. Is it beanbag toss or something like that? Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a fun time. So good team building.
But what kind of ball? So do you throw
a football?
Bowling ball?
No, you throw a football. That'd be awesome. Throwing a bowling ball through the air. No,
it wouldn't get there for me. So
no.
I don't know.
You're throwing a football. Yeah, throwing a football at the bowling pins. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that I can understand.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. But you're outside. Okay. I want to know everything about this. I'll have to look on YouTube later. I'm sorry, everyone. We're already off the rails. Okay.
So Dawn, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm a little sunburned and hot because I'm sunburned. And then Tosh ate a bug today, and it was I thought it was a string, so that it was like this much coming out of her mouth. It had long legs. Gross. And I ran up to her because I thought she was going to. It's not good for them to swallow strings either.
Sure.
So either way, and then she ran away, and she's like went under the couch and started chewing on it, and I just about lost everything. My lunch.
You guys had much more exciting days than I did. My goodness.
always with my cat.
I love it.
Oh, Matt thinks it's going to kill me. So, but I'm super.
Matt knows it's going to kill her eventually. Yes, it's a fact.
Yeah, you might not be wrong. So, and that's the first time I've admitted that. But the way she looks at me when she gets her nighttime zooms, you know how the cats get the zoomies. Mm-hmm. I'm like, don't even. Sometimes I hide. Don't even look at me like that. It's frightening.
Building up her strength so she can take you down eventually.
Oh my gosh, is she ever
staying fit?
So, can you believe 1 week from tonight we're going to be draft night?
Yeah,
number
finally.
1.
So
pretty incredible. It's been quite an off season. I mean, these last few off seasons have been really interesting. I was actually thinking about it as I walked back in here. I was joking with you guys when we were doing our little pre-talk. I haven't shot anything in this room since really we went back from COVID. This is where I shot all of our shows. It's where I interviewed Jordan Love for the first time after the Packers drafted him in 2020 and the height of the pandemic. And just how quickly those 3 years went. And now we're in a situation where, you know, it looks like Love is going to be the quarterback next year. And now the Packers are going to be looking to build with these 10 picks around him with that offense and the defense. And it's always the most exciting time of the year. And, you know, next Monday we'll talk with Brian Gutekunst. We'll really get this thing off and rolling, but you can't beat it. I know the draft, it is such a, you know, in a lot of ways, it feels like you're picking and you're making the best decision you can. And some are going to hit, some are going to miss, but just the idea and the hope of finding the next Clay Matthews, finding the next Devontae Adams, it just adds to the excitement. So it's been great, especially, you know, with this offseason, a lot of it's been wait and see mode. It feels like things are finally starting to ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something's happening. Matt?
I love that feeling of ramping up is something that as a, you know, avid content consumer, it's like the ideas of who the players are starting to like actually stick in my mind. It's like building, you know, the knowledge is building and stuff. So at that point where it's like I'm feeling just super energized about it, and it just, I can't wait. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, and you start to get invested into picks too, and hearing their backstories. And, you know, I think everybody, you know, finds 4 or 5 guys, even if you're not a huge like draftnik, you know, where you want to like look into like all these guys and figure out who the Packers are going to pick in the 4th round. I mean, just being able to kind of get a feel for the players, and obviously knowing where the Packers could potentially pick and what they've done in the past and what could help them now. It is always a catch-22 though, because there's certain guys that you kind of fall in love with, and then unfortunately they end up somewhere else, or another team trades up for them. I remember in, I think it was 14 or 15, maybe 14. I was a big Ryan Shazier fan. I was like, man, this is the guy. This is the dude that would solve so many issues for them on defense. And then Pittsburgh goes up and takes him, and
grabs him.
It's just it's the rub of the green in this sport. But but certainly to be picking at 15, obviously the Packers don't want to be picking that high, but it gives them a chance at a really, really high quality player, whether that be, you know, one of these big time positions that we're talking about with tight end, receiver, or could it be, you know, getting the best safety on the board, getting one of the best edge rushers. There's so many different ways the Packers could attack this thing. I think that adds to really the excitement.
Absolutely. Do you have any like draft crushes yourself, Wes? Or
well, it's funny because it doesn't really make much sense for 15, but Darnell Washington's a guy I really fell in love with because, you know, you talk about the Mercedes Lewis type of tight end, and I look at him as just a baby Mercedes, right? A guy that is just completely huge, but is tested out of this world. What was it, 4.64, 40, and these different things that he brings to the table. And if you look at the way in which Georgia used him, I mean, the film almost looks emblematic of what Mercedes did during the latter half of his career. The Packers have a big need there. I know, talking with Larry McCarron, my colleague, and obviously everyone knows Larry, but you know, he really likes Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. There's so many good tight ends in this draft. It probably means the Packers won't take any of them in the first round. But it's finding those right fits. I mean, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa as an edge rusher. I mean, 6'5", 272, checks all the boxes. I was a big George Karlaftis guy last year, and now you have a guy like Van Ness that could come in and maybe make an impact as a year 1 edge rusher. Brian Branch, if you're looking at safeties. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a guy that I love right now. A big slot receiver, 6'1", 195 pounds, whatever he goes at, dude that just torched Utah in the Rose Bowl 2 years ago. I mean, that's the cool thing about this. We do our prospect primer series. We do all these different things, and it really makes you dive into these prospects. And some of these guys we'll end up seeing around the league, like Chris Olave, after I really liked him last year. And, you know, some of these guys occasionally will end up in Green Bay. So, it's kind of all across the board. But I feel like at 15, whatever the Packers do there, they're going to get a really nice player.
Yeah, no doubt. I am trying not to get too attached to the idea of getting Jackson Smith and Jigba on the team. Trying to like keep it tempered.
Yeah.
But if it happens, man, I'll be doing cartwheels up and down.
Well, and the reason I like him so much, in addition to everything he did at Ohio State, I know there's a lot of folks out there that'll say, well, that sophomore year, I mean, he had Garrett Wilson on one side of him, Olave on the other, but he still needed to put up the yards himself. And I'll be honest with you, the Packers have a need at slot. If Randall Cobb isn't back, if he, eventually moves on to the Jets or something like that, Packers need somebody to step up in that role. And it is a lot more versatile now than maybe it was 15 years ago. But to have a Watson on one side and a Dobbs on another, my goodness, to add, JSN into the middle of that is really enticing. We will always use the caveat that, it's been 21 years since the Packers took a receiver in the first round. That person would now, be able to go out and get a beer if they want. But the fact of the matter is it still adds to the excitement. And I'm sure, the intrigue of all this, whether is it, okay, if it's receiver, what does that mean for edge rusher? If it's tight end, what does that mean, for receiver? It's a domino effect. You wish you could take them all, but you can only take so many. So, and then, obviously we're all waiting and seeing also on the quarterback situation, how could that impact things if the Packers could pick up another pick, if that would go down before next Thursday night.
Right. And having 10 picks is great. Just having 10 picks too this year. And
third most in the NFL right now, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. I forgot why we have so many. It was from something we did last year, right? I don't even remember why.
The one thing Brian Gutekunst has been very proficient at is acquiring 7th rounders. Ted Thompson typically dispatched a lot of those and moved up. Brian just keeps. Last year he had 4 7th rounders. This year I believe he has 4 7th rounders. A part of that was the trade of Colt Van Lanen going to Jacksonville. They got Jacksonville's 7th round pick. Now that ended up being a little farther back because of Jacksonville playing as well as they did and making the playoffs. But then also the other 7th rounder was a byproduct of I want to say it was the Corey Bojorquez trade. The Packers flipped there, where I think they gave LA their 6th and then they got LA's 7th.
Okay.
I think that was, and then maybe there was a comp pick in there or something too, but yeah, that's where it comes from.
It's hard to remember everything, but yeah, it's exciting. It's so exciting. And I don't even think I think you even on, and by the way, for those listening, if you don't know what we're talking about here, Wes and his partner Mike at the Packers, they're back right now with their unscripted. That means things are happening.
Yeah.
Right?
It means the off season's over.
Kind of what I wanted to say. And so I'm that means it's 4 months till football.
Well, and then the other thing I think people didn't realize, Mike and I are currently doing this on Zoom because the Packers, if you guys notice at Lambeau Field in Green Bay right now, if you're driving by, they're making big renovations to the scoreboards, right? They're revitalizing all that. Oh. Well, that's also tied into our control room, which is currently closed. So we don't have access to do our normal studio show like usual with how we do it. So Mike and I, it's like back in COVID times right now. Right. He's over in the studio. I'm over in one of my boss's offices. And we're going back and forth through a door. So it's the way it's meant to be. But hey,
you mentioned that. I was like, why is Wes back in his boss's office again? I was thinking, did somebody get sick?
No, fortunately, everybody's healthy, but they just we can't be in the same room because, as I'm sure you guys know, with the Zoom stuff and with Yard, Barker and all that, being able to make all of it fit, so you're not echoing and things like that. We have to do it that way. So
right.
It's always a work in progress.
Matt's out there in Cincinnati, and I'm in San Diego, California. So
nice.
we have no echo going on.
Yeah, not so much.
But we're both from Wisconsin.
Nice.
So yeah,
I can't argue with San Diego, man. That's one of my favorite places in the United States. So
yeah, it's
beautiful.
Pretty great. It's pretty great, and spring is here finally. We had a rough winter.
Okay, Don.
I know, but we did. I mean, it was unusual. we did get rain that we needed, though, so that's pretty great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So on our show, when we have a special guest like yourself, Wes, what we always do is we start reading your Twitter. And their Twitter is your Twitter biography, and it's a Twitter because I can't say that. So we love our audience to get to know you a little better, and we always feel like that's kind of a good icebreaker.
Mine's pretty short, though, unfortunately. So
it's powerful. It's
powerful.
So it reads: Wes Hodkiewicz at Wes Hod, senior writer at Packers, human still learning, which I just love that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Whit Lowry lyric. It's one of my favorites.
Nice.
I always good one-liners. So
right. Short but powerful words. Debatable notability. I don't know about that.
Well, according to Elon Musk, that was the case, and now I guess
Oh.
the debate has been solved. I have no notability anymore,
Wow.
so
It's a bummer. So
it
sorry
is
to hear
what
it.
it is.
That is so dumb.
I
So
lost
dumb.
that debate.
So dumb.
You're not like one of the
You
people
lost a
who he's
whole
like
lot.
paying for the check mark for. It's like LeBron James and a couple people. He's like, I'll pay for yours.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
I haven't
like,
gotten
you
that
need
email
some
yet,
people.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So dumb. So dumb.
Hey, you know what I love about it though? When I was at the Press Gazette in 2000, whatever it was, 10, they made us get verified. That was like a big thing with Gannett. But me and my colleague, I was still in preps at the time doing high school sports. Weston Hodkiewicz, when he's covering high school sports and has 800 followers, I don't need to be verified, okay? And especially when you see my last name, I think I'm the only Weston Hodkiewicz on the planet.
Right.
But they were making us all get verified. Well, there was a little secret. If you need to have your company's URL in the bio in order to be verified.
Oh.
So I needed to have greenbaypressgazette.com as my thing. It was like one of the check marks for that. Well, so what did I do instead? I did Toys R Us as my URL. So then they weren't actually able to verify me because I didn't have an actual accredited URL, because that's how much I didn't want to get verified. Eventually I did, though. So now they just took it away. So
Yeah,
everything comes full circle.
it does. It does. The circle of life. Well, debatable notability. I'm still, I'll take Elon up with that, with Elon. He's got debatable notability. Did you see how much money he lost today? He lost money on something else. Yeah, he's always losing money. So whatever. Location 920. I know what that means, but you might not if you're listening. So Packers.com. So of course, our first question is the most important. Where's 920? Because that's your location. And do you own a farm? Because everyone in Wisconsin grew up on a farm, right?
What?
Yep, pretty much. I come from a long line of farmers. First of all, 920 Green Bay, Wisconsin. Represent. Although now we actually got an extra area code now coming too. I think it's like 267 or something, because I think we used up all the 920 numbers. So,
wow.
But I'm still 920, so I will still stick with that. I actually do come from a long line of farmers. My first cousin raises crops and all those type of things. My dad worked on a farm when he was younger. My grandfather owned a farm in Pulaski, moved up from Chicago. Well, his dad, my great grandfather, came over from Poland, worked for 2 years in the meat butcher stuff down in Chicago.
Yeah.
Got my grandmother over here and earned enough money to move up to Pulaski for 1 cent an acre. Bought farmland in Pulaski in 1930, 1920, something like that.
Wow.
So I never farmed. I am definitely white collar all the way in terms of my job and everything, but definitely is in the history of the Hodkiewicz Ladusky kind of fan. I'm pretty much like 100% Polish. So there's tons of that in my history.
The hog farm. Yeah.
I love that. Is your grandfather still alive?
Unfortunately, no. He passed away in 2015, right after the Packers drafted Demarius Randall in the first round. I found out later that night he passed on us. But I still have my grandmother. His wife is still with us. We just celebrated her 90. Actually, I take that back. Her 90. We just did Easter with her. Her 92nd birthday is coming up, though. She's my last living grandparent out in Pulaski. So.
Wow.
92. Nice.
That's
still on her own too. She's just rocking and rolling.
Of course she is. That's great. That's the Wisconsin way.
Absolutely.
My mother is 86, I think.
Oh,
and
nice.
She is. Remember, we were talking about a certain person who wasn't super tech savvy. Yeah. Well, my mother teaches people how to use technology.
Oh, that's awesome.
So have Mike call her. So
I didn't want to say. I was thinking about when
there's a lot of mics in my life. We don't know who that is.
Could be any mic, and even a number of mics.
No, but yeah, she's just so great at that.
That's awesome.
She uses all the what's my word? The acronyms, like all the little abbreviations that you use on Twitter.
GIFs? Or
no, like ROFL, rowing on the floor.
Yeah,
like
all the Urban
and I have to
Dictionary
look it up because she's so far ahead of me on this. She's always doing. She's always. I don't know how she does it.
That's awesome.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get my fangirl question out of the way too, but I have like we have a list, don't we, Maddie?
We got questions.
We've got questions for you. So, but my fangirl question, which you probably hear all the time, might you share a little with our audience about your role with our beloved Packers, how long you've been with the Packers, how your role has changed over the years? Was it your dream job? And what's it like to roll into that venerated location every single day? Does it ever get old?
No, it doesn't get old. I mean, again, I grew up in Green Bay. I was born and raised on the east side of town, and then, well, actually, I was born over there. My parents moved out to one of the suburbs here, but I went to K through 12 at the same high school, Bayport High School. Went to UWGB in town, and I started working at the Green Bay Press Gazette when I was 18 as a score taker. That kind of one thing led to another. I spent 10 years with the Press Gazette, and then was very lucky in April of 2016. So almost on my 7-year anniversary here in 5 days. The Packers brought me on as a staff writer. So we talked about Mike there really quickly, Mike Spofford. I actually never worked with Mike at the Press Gazette, but one thing that's very interesting is he was the preps writer there a few years before I had gotten there. And the guy that was his number 2, my best friend, Scott Vency, who's still there as their preps writer, he was his assistant. Well, when Mike moved on, he actually went and worked in healthcare for a little bit before coming over to the Packers. Scott took over as the full-time preps writer. I eventually came in as his number 2. So I always kind of had this like 1 degree of Kevin Bacon separation from Mike. So I always knew him. My boss, Duke Bobber, got to know him really well during my time covering the Packers. Ryan Hartwig, our social media manager, I stood up in Ryan's wedding. He stood up in mine. There were so many connections, and as difficult as that was for me to make that switch in 16, it made so much sense on a number of levels as someone from Green Bay that wanted to start a family in Green Bay. And obviously we know the newspaper industry and the way things are going. The Packers could not have treated me better. I was really nervous about making that switch, just based on the fact that for 4.5 years, I covered the team critically. I wrote stories that people didn't want to see. I wrote some, things at times when, you lose an NFC championship game in 14, like the Packers did in Seattle. It's tough. Like those are tough moments, but, Mike McCarthy, so many people in that organization were so welcoming to me, Russ Ball, and it's been a dream drive. The story I always tell people is when you're like someone that grows up in Green Bay and you drive past Lambeau Field, even if you're not working there, you drive past there several times a week. There isn't a whole lot going on here. I mean, it is the biggest spot in town. It's very easy to take that for granted, but walking inside that building every day and understanding the role I have and the job that I have, I'm very grateful for it. So, and some amazing people that work around me. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, but just in a blink of an eye, it's already been 7 years. I can't even believe that.
Wow.
That is so awesome. Quick comment before I have a question. The comment is, so with the progression of people in the Preps beat and the Press Gazette, it's kind of like Mike's your grandpa, actually.
In a way.
It works out. Yeah.
Yeah. If I say that, he's going to slap me in the face.
Well, I said he can't reach me in Cincinnati. So
I mean, I could be your grandma, but Mike's a little young for that. I'm 62. So
no, I mean, that it is the cool thing about it though, is that, and I always knew Mike, I wrote stories for him because he did the Packers yearbook. Even when I wasn't full-time on Packers yet, I would write stories once a year for the Packers yearbook, just helping out with a byline. Always had a great amount of respect for him and enjoyed him. He does make jokes about the age difference between us. And just, but I think at the same time, we complement each other really well. And he's the best editor I've ever worked with. His ability, his dad is an English professor. Mike's good at what he does, but Mike could have been a expert, unbelievable English professor if he wanted to be. He is as good as teaching English as anyone I've ever met or been around. And my writing has gotten so much better from being with him the last 7 years. So, but yeah, every once in a while we'll throw some digs in there about the age thing, but I'm getting there too now. So I gotta watch myself soon. That worm is going to turn here. So
that's right. Every day a little bit older, man. Yeah. Okay. So I was driving my kid home from one of my kids home from Girl Scouts last night. And so I'm 45, and Pink Floyd's song Time came on the radio. And this is a song that I've known since like high school, and like you memorize the words. So I'm singing along with, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm like what they're talking about there with the person getting older. I was like, oh my, what happened? So
It's nuts, man. Because like, we had the Packers tailgate tour last week,
Mhm.
and Devon House was back. I almost called him Hashan, Clinton Dix, and then also Eddie Lacy. And now you're getting these alumni. Evan Smith was on that too, former Evan Dietrich Smith.
That's right.
Guys that I covered, and I covered their entire career for the most part here, Devon, from beginning to end. And it's just really interesting where these careers go by so fast and time flies so fast that, Clay Matthews going into the Senior Bowl Hall of Fame right now. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
it is remarkable. And next thing you know, like, I'm 35 now. If I was a Green Bay Packer, I'd be the second oldest guy on the team, if you count Rodgers and Mercedes right now. So that's just the way things go. But one thing I do appreciate about it is, like, I've never really feared age. Like, I think age brings with you a lot of perspective. I won't necessarily call it wisdom. I think I still have a lot to learn, but it does bring you a pretty good perspective. And we have incredible interns that come in. That's the one nice thing about the Packers too. The amount of interns we have, the Press Gazette, I didn't really have that. I was the youngest by like 10 years and there wasn't anybody else really close. So it's neat. It's fun. You don't have to fear age. I welcome it.
That's right. I mean, I'm definitely a lot wiser
than
I was, So,
and you get to have nice moments like that where you remember the Pink Floyd songs and
that's right.
bring it all back together. So,
and nice moments with kids and stuff like that. So yeah, I can't complain too much. I mean, I wish my knees worked like they did 5 years ago, but so it goes. It's the price you pay.
Comes with the territory.
Exactly. So the question I was going to ask you though, Wes, and this is the thing that just absolutely fascinates me. So like, Bill Huber and Matt Schneidman will talk about how like they're not Packers fans, they're Packers writers.
Yeah.
And what they care about is like getting a good story. And I respect that. Like they're upfront about that. They're not trying to be like they're being very transparent about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now of course you grew up in Green Bay, lived in Green Bay your whole life, sounds like. Obviously grew up a Green Bay Packers fan. So how does that bounce? Like, is that something you have put entirely to the side as a writer? I mean, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Matt, because like I didn't grow up like the typical Packers fan in Green Bay, and I know some people find that hard to believe, but I'm like, you can probably look at me and guess that I wasn't really the athlete, right, back in the day, but I love fantasy football and I love fantasy sports and I love statistics. That was always the way I went with things, and fantasy football really grew throughout my childhood. It went from, I remember in second grade, you'd have advanced math classes where you would just tally up the touchdowns. You didn't really care about yards or anything like that. So I fell in love with that aspect of it. I know that was really difficult for my dad because there'd be times, I'll never forget the story where like the Packers were playing and Donald Driver caught a pretty critical touchdown. And I was like really ticked off about it. And my dad couldn't really understand that because it actually had cost me to fall behind because I'm sitting there tallying up. That was before we had live scoring. So I'm like, I had my notebook out trying to tally up the things. So it's a long answer to your question, but I wasn't ever really the traditional type of Packer fan. I loved them, enjoyed watching them, but I always had kind of my fantasy team. I'm in a fantasy league I've been in for 20 years. Like that's just always kind of been the way I've been wired. But I think in the long run, that actually served me really well because I was able to sort of remove myself from it and see things from like a macro level, like above, where I'm not having my emotions drive me. I wish I could think of which reporter said this, but it was a good quote back in the day. I remember when I first started in journalism where they said, being a journalist will kind of beat the fandom out of you. And it is sort of it's a harsh way to look at it, but it also is really true because like you look at the story, the example I always use is the end of the 21 season where the walk-off field goal from Robbie Gould, Packers, Lambeau Field, difficult day. But my mind is so wired into what we have to accomplish, the job that's in front of me. That's just the way you think about it. I always try to use the example with people like my dad worked at a paper mill, and when he had shutdown, it was tunnel vision on stuff like that. Now I get what I do for a living is a little bit more like the toy section, but it's the way that I'm able to, I like to think that I can be rational about things, and I just try not to get too low with it. Try to give an optimistic beat to it because I'm sort of an optimistic kind of person just by nature. So it's a very long-winded answer to your question, but I guess basically the way to say it is that, I just kind of focus on the job aspect of it and just trying to do the best I can. Certainly there are a lot of benefits to winning. We know what it's like. It's a lot easier to cover those locker rooms when it's, happy players, but you have to be ready to handle all of it.
Yeah, no doubt. That was a good answer. That makes a lot of sense because I think I imagined that you were like a bigger Packers fan growing up maybe than you actually were. So I was thinking like, how do you put that to the side?
No, I definitely was. I mean, I think the hard thing for me too is that once I got into high school and that, obviously your motivations kind of change. But I always joke with Leroy Butler about this because, I was the biggest Leroy fan when I was younger. Because my grandfather was a huge Leroy Butler fan, and that kind of got drilled into me. And, I think we all had kind of our favorites and the people we idolized in their stories. I mean, Leroy's story always connected with me because of everything he went through with his mom and, being a kid with learning disabilities when he was younger. That's the Hollywood movie stuff, right? So I think in that regard, I've always kind of connected more with that. And the thing that's tough though is that the more I do this and the more because I know players a lot better now, I feel, than I did when I was covering them for the paper, just because of the reaction of it. Kenny Clark has never known me as like the newspaper guy. I've always worked at Packers.com as long as he's been in Green Bay. And I enjoy getting to know them as people. That's the hardest thing. When you see people either be disappointed or injured or things of that nature, that's where it gets really difficult because the humanistic side of things, you really cheer for the person really underneath that face mask and not just the number on their back.
Nice. We've got some good questions coming in the chat, and you just kind of like led really nicely into one that Katie asked. Is our friend Katie? She said, "Have you ever been starstruck with any player, Packer or otherwise?"
I don't know if I would quantify it as starstruck. I was completely enamored the first time I saw Julius Peppers. Because Julius is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. In addition to the fact that everybody knows, his story and what he accomplished in this league. And the Packers at that point in 2014, during my time on the beat, hadn't signed a lot of premier players in free agency. They brought in Jeff Saturday and there was a couple guys here and there, but Julius Peppers was kind of a larger than life dude. And he had this mentality about him where he's kind of a quiet, soft-spoken guy. When he wanted to say something, he could say it really well, but he just kind of kept to himself. That was probably the biggest one because, like, for the most part, a lot, especially the way the Packers do things here, draft and develop, it has been this process of kind of getting to know these guys from rookie minicamp on and watching it grow, like Devontae Adams and going through every ebb and flow of Devontae's career with him, from the good to 2015 to being an all-pro. I mean, you kind of do see past him as athletes a little bit, but Julius was the one that I think when I saw him for the first time, I was like, it just gives you a different appreciation for the game and just how athletic, how big, how strong these guys are, because it wasn't just what Julius represented as a potential Hall of Fame player. It was also the fact that it's like, man, now you understand why David Bakhtiari's job is so difficult. You understand why Brian Bulaga, the caliber of athlete that they're having to keep at bay. Julius was definitely that guy for me that and I make everybody look big, but I made Julius look real big,
Yes, and speaking of the comments, I just want to make sure we acknowledge everyone who's here for us all. Bill Berquist, hello. Hello to Lorenzo, one of our regulars who's here every week. Jimmy Christensen wants to know, Wes, why is Jimmy your favorite person on Lombardi's Bar?
Valid question.
Should we do that? You were talking about superlatives. Should we do that like worst section? And I can say something about Jimmy then.
There's your first superlative.
Like he's the worst MMA fighter I know. He's the no. Jimmy grows the best mustache. That would be my compliment to him.
Okay.
Great mustache.
Crop tops too, right?
Yeah,
I was an athlete. I see that, Katie. She's absolutely right. I was an athlete. That's what I was. I was on mock trial. That's what I did.
Nice.
Katie, there's another question here I'm going to get into a little bit later. And then she wants to ask an Aaron question. I was not going to do that, but I didn't want to put you on the spot. Did Aaron pay his last game at Lambeau? And what do you remember from his last game at Lambeau?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Let's call it the most recent game at Lambeau.
Yeah.
Officially.
Get out of that weed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. It's one of those things that I think Rodgers recognized that a lot more than I did when the season ended, because there was a part of me that was just thinking, well, he'd signed the extension, so I was sort of anticipating that he would be back. But seeing the end of that and the moments rolling through my head of him and Randall walking off, that's going to be something that's always going to stay with me now. That game largely has sort of become kind of a blur. I do this thing on Instagram where like I'll it's for the wins. I'm not going to do it for the losses. I don't want to make people depressed, but like I'll put down like the score when the next morning when I get to work, It's been the thing I've been doing, I think, as long as I've worked for the Packers, or at least as long as I've been using Instagram. And I still have not filled in the Lions game at the end of the year, because that was the one where I always say the same. It reminds me of the 15 season when they lost in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it from like a screenplay standpoint, the ending of that game did not fit what really happened in that game.
Yeah.
Jeff Janis, 160 receiving yards. He had more receiving yards in that game than I think he might have had in his career in the regular season. You know, they lose Randall. They have this incredible comeback, and then Larry Fitzgerald. It didn't fit the narrative. You know, the game against Detroit, kudos to the Lions. They deserved to win that game, but it didn't fit the pseudo sort of run the table thing. It was just like the train kind of ran out of gas at the end. So, I mean, in a way, I think it's fitting if that was it, that Rodgers got to play the last game at Lambeau. You know, you never know with these cross-conference things now, if teams line up in the same spot in the division. I don't even know when they play the AFC East again, but I did this thing on Instagram too today where I hope Packers fans are going to be able to differentiate and separate the trade of Aaron Rodgers with the next step with Jordan Love, because I have so much gratitude for covering Rodgers for 10 years. I mean, I covered one of the best quarterbacks to ever play this game. I mean, when you talk about a treat, not just the winning, but just watching that level of excellence. I was pretty young with Brett Favre, and then obviously he made his comeback late, played incredibly well in 07 and then 08. But it is, I should say 09, excuse me, his first year with the Vikings. But I just to be able to appreciate what Rodgers did, but also be excited for for Jordan Love. I hope people are able to do that, because there's a lot to be excited about with the Packers, while at the same time really understanding and appreciating what Aaron Rodgers meant. If that was it for him walking off the field with Randall Cobb, honestly, that's probably the best way for him to go.
Absolutely. And to find people who can do both those things at the same time, appreciate Rodgers for everything that he did, while also being excited for Jordan Love. I feel like, unfortunately, it's maybe like too rare of a breed, because I feel like a lot of people will fall into the Jordan Love's going to take us to the toilet bowl kind of a thing. You know?
Yeah.
And enough people, are kind of like, I think in the moment, especially too, because it's still like kind of fresh, are kind of, still upset with Aaron Rodgers for any of a number of reasons. But yeah, I mean, hopefully at least over time, we'll all be able to balance it out. I mean, at this point, I'm just excited for Jordan Love, and just ready to go forward with that.
Yeah, and the fact is, I mean, he was the first round pick they took 3 years ago that they traded up to get at 26, and I think we've talked so long about what's potentially behind that door. I think we all just want to see it at this point, and live with whatever that result is. And from Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, yeah, it's been a tough couple years, but the guy gave so much. And when I look at the developments around Lambeau Field and just seeing Green Bay in general, I mean, number 12 had a lot to do with that. So, but yeah, it was weird. It was one of those games that I'm not going to be able to remember specific moments from it. I go back and watch it, and obviously it'll hit some bells and whistles, but just the way it ended was definitely, it felt a lot more like a conclusion than I expected when that ball kicked off, especially after you saw that it was set up for Green Bay to, you win, you're in.
Yeah.
It really is amazing how much, you could say it comes back to Aaron Rodgers, how much he's done for the franchise, for the city, for the stadium, for the infrastructure, for everything. It's when you kind of think of it that way, it blows my mind. I don't know. It's hard to really comprehend.
Just because, I mean, I think I look back to when I was a kid and growing up around Lambeau and seeing the old green stadium, with everything, and how, like, the way everything has evolved, and the Johnsonville Tailgate Village now, and the crick that they've added on. When you guys get a chance to see that, I mean, my goodness, I mean, Titletown is just immaculate. My son absolutely loves it over there. The ice skating rink, and we started doing the tube rides this year. I made sure no photos were taken of me on that. So
I was thinking about, because they'd be photoshopped into pictures.
There's too many bloggers out there. I don't think the full scope of all that stuff, but I mean, Aaron Rodgers is tied in, and there's so many people, great people in this organization, have done so many things, but the Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers eras, 15 years, on both sides of that, that doesn't happen everywhere. And it's seeing how the grass grew from that amount of water that was put down. It's pretty special. And hopefully it continues with Jordan Love. I'm excited. Nice kid, has done and said everything right. So I'm hoping for a lot of success for him.
Yeah, just a smile on his face this week in the pictures. Like, just
Yeah.
so excited to be here to do the work and be QB1. Makes me even more excited.
Yeah, and you can tell how much it means to people too. I mean, AJ Dillon has gotten to be good, really close friends with him. I mean, there's a lot of people that really want to see him get this opportunity. And Aaron Jones said it perfectly at the tailgate tour. He's like, "Hey, listen, we're gonna support whoever the quarterback is, but our message is going to be to Jordan that if this is the way things are going, you're going to be our guy, and you're going to have our full support. And we're going to do everything we can to make you successful." And I think when you look at a lot of the offensive pieces around him, there's plenty of those tools there for him to have a really successful season and come out of the gate swinging.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm excited for Jordan. I am really excited for him. So here's our next question for you, and it's kind of a multiple, like fast.
Multiple choice.
You take it. Multiple choice. You take it wherever you want. So, how did you become a Packers fan? And now that sounds probably counterintuitive because you grew up in Green Bay, but not necessarily. But who had the most influence on your fandom? Was it your dad, your mom, your grandpops?
Definitely my dad. Yeah.
Your dad.
Yeah, my grandfather too, because my grandfather would talk to me about watching, and seeing like Don Hudson and Cecil Isbell, and he grew up here. He went to the games, I think, at City Stadium and all that. But my dad had the biggest impact on me because I think a lot of people in my generation, that millennial generation, we got to hear the stories of the 29 years of ineptitude and one division title, one playoff appearance. Oh my gosh, you should have seen the 1983 season when we went 8-8 and got to the playoffs because it was a strike season or whatever. Like, it gives you an appreciation for what the Packers did and that turnaround that started in 1993. I always caution people though, because I think some people worry about that and they view that as like this dark alley that could eventually come back and this abyss that will suck them up as a black hole. The game is so different now with free agency though. Yeah, you can see why the Packers fell into those doldrums when they couldn't, if you didn't draft well and you couldn't go out and sign guys, it's gonna be really hard to turn that thing around quick. You had to find your people. But I mean, you look at the Jackson, I don't think anyone's had any problem going to Jacksonville. Christian Kirk was going to get $22 million a year. He didn't care where he was playing. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes my dad romanticizes that era a little bit too much because the game has changed with free agency, but it did give you an appreciation for when you have a franchise quarterback, what that means for your football team, your city, your community, and really just having that opportunity for maybe outside of 2008. Every year, I think the Packers have gone on the field. They've expected to contend for a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. That is the ultimate luxury because
expectation, right?
You want to win as many Super Bowls as you can. You want to win as many titles as you can, but the game is not as much fun if you come out of the gate and you don't feel like you have a chance, right? So I give my dad a lot of credit for being able to sort of allow me to find my fandom myself, and understanding that, fantasy football is cool for me. Like that's what the kids at school do. So he never pushed me. Like he allowed me to be the fan that I was.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. Like, we shouldn't fear this potential like abyss that we could fall into for decades again. I mean, having grown up in the 80s, everyone was a fan in Wisconsin and next to Madison where I grew up, but like it wasn't like we could trash talk to like the Bears fans, we can say anything about it because the team was just not good. And so the fact that like my earliest like happy memory about watching it was like Don Majkowski, like this new spark for the team. Yeah. Like Don Majkowski, like, so
Packers Hall of Famer.
Yes. A good dude. Yeah. So it's good to hear that, like, okay, no, you got a good point. With the parity in the league and with like how things have changed, we don't have to, it's not going to happen. And it's a well-run team. So got that going for us.
And I think my aspect is too, and is another thing that I said on my Instagram post today. I've never covered a young quarterback. I mean, I covered Brett Hundley and Jordan Love, but I mean, like, I've never covered a starting quarterback for the first time. When I came on the beat, I was with the Packers, or I was with the Press Gazette, basically when Rodgers got drafted. But as far as covering the team, Aaron Rodgers was already a Super Bowl champion. He already won an MVP. He was probably already a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame at that point when I started covering the team. To see a young guy come in, that's what excites me. I'm really, and there's going to be good days and bad days and good games and poor games, but it's all going to be a learning experience. And, I think the NFL's lucky that, we'll see how all these details get worked out, but the NFL's better with Aaron Rodgers in it too. So if Rodgers feels like he can go to New York and, compete there with Nathaniel Hackett and Robert Saleh and that defense, more power to him too. I love the sport of football. I love the National Football League. I love being able to appreciate, it's going to stink next year without having Tom Brady out there. I was happy when Tom Brady came back because I remember playing with him on Madden 2000, like 2001 or whatever. Like it's just the sport is better when you have those type of brand names available. And, and if this is the way everything works out, then Jordan Love will get his chance to leave his imprint in Green Bay as well.
Yes, he will. I agree. On that, don't you kind of feel like, or maybe you don't, but don't you feel like the margins are closer these days from team to team than they used to be because of a variety of reasons, and the NFL has made it such?
Yes, 100%. And unfortunately, COVID has sort of did that too now, because it created this sort of time, shift with all the cap money having to be pushed in the future. I mean, I know the Packers have had to make some tough decisions this year, but I mean, shoot, the Los Angeles Rams, I don't think have specialists right now on their roster, like any specialists. Like, teams have really had to tighten the belt. And I think that's what's giving, the Chicago Bears of the world some feelings here that, hey, maybe this is where we catch the pack, because everybody's having to sort of take their medicine on this salary cap issue. But at the end of the day, that's what I think is the best thing about the National Football League. I want these guys to make as much money as possible. I'd love for guaranteed contracts to be a thing. I mean, these guys, the way they put their bodies on the line, the things they do, it is so admirable. But at the same time, there's a reason why I don't watch Major League Baseball. It doesn't really have a lot to do with the product. It has to do with the fact that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to have a really hard time being able to keep pace with the Los Angeles Dodgers. The cap being out of control, salaries being all over the place. I love the parity of the National Football League, in that if you are smart with your money and your assets, you will have a chance to rise up, and you could do it within a year or two. Chicago Bears, if they make the right moves, they could be back in this thing in a year. Detroit Lions, look at them. They finally got a GM hire right. They finally got some talent. They're making a run at things now. That's exciting. That's good for football. That's right. You'll have your outliers. The Cleveland Browns, the Washington Commanders, they had some tough years and didn't get much better. But at the end of the day, I think the NFL, where it's at right now, and the fact that so many different teams can compete, if you're a fan out there of a specific team, doesn't matter if you went 2-14 or 14-2. Well, actually now 14-3, 13-14. Right. Thank you for that one, Roger. But the fact is that you are a blink away from being able to compete, and I think that's the best thing that this league has going for it. In addition to the fact that we love contact, physical football. So
So with the Lions surging and the Vikings taking the division last year, like, if you had to guess, who do you think? What's going to be the order for the NFC North this season?
I think the Lions are going to be the ones the Packers are probably going to have to deal with the most. I mean, I understand the Vikings. I get it. They were the division champions last year. You got to give them that respect. The Packers ran them out of Lambeau Field, but you got to give them that respect. But Detroit's the team that I see with the upside. I think they have so much good young talent. I mean, I absolutely love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's a fantastic possession receiver. I think they put the right pieces around him. I think they messed up not keeping Jamal Williams, not just because of, he played for the Packers. No, I mean, all due respect to David Montgomery, but when you have David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift, you might have a full running back for a full season between the two of them. Jamal was a perfect complement to Swift in that he is durable, he's consistent, and he 8 touchdowns. And I don't want to hear this garbage about, he got all these 15 touchdowns. How many were within the one? Packers had a really hard time trying to score within the one last year. Yeah, that's a valuable thing. Now, I know a lot of that's the offensive line, but you got to give Jamal his credit too for what he accomplished last season with that team. So I think Detroit is going to be a team that the NFL is going to have to deal with, and certainly the Packers are going to have to run through. They had that big long streak, whatever it was, 23, 24 years in a row of winning at Lambeau Field. Since that got snapped, I think the Packers have maybe won once or twice against Detroit at Lambeau. They're going to be a tough team to deal with, and the team that I think is going to be on the top of my radar. We'll see what happens with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins gives them a chance. I mean, certainly Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the game right now, or right up there with it.
Right up
but
there, yeah.
I think all things considered, Detroit is a much more complete team.
And they've got the dog mentality.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Gonna bite your
Dan
kneecaps.
Campbell, man, when you instill a culture, I mean, and you can do it a number of different ways. Matt LaFleur's done it his own way in Green Bay, but I mean, Dan Campbell finally captured, I thought, what Detroit needed, right? Jim Schwartz, they were edgy, but they were undisciplined. Jim Caldwell, they were more disciplined, but they kind of lacked that oomph, you know, and then it just all fell apart, you know, for a few years thereafter after Caldwell. But you know, Campbell's the guy. You know, there's a reason why the Packers interviewed him too. I mean, I think everybody saw him as an up and comer and a guy that really, you know, players are going to rally around. And Detroit certainly has.
He has heart. I mean, he has heart. You got to love him. Now, I like the Lions. I'm sorry to say that, but I like the league. I like football. I like the whole thing. So I don't mind saying that I like a team or a player that's from a different team. So 100%. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say to me on Twitter. So, okay. So Dad, so I love that. I love that because I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin around all kinds of football and whatnot and going to practice in the summer with the Green Bay and going to games and not even being slightly interested in football until I became very interested. So you just never know. You could grow up in Wisconsin and not like football. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny too because like here, there's only so many things to do, right? So I mean, in some ways, it always sort of revolves around football. My son, you know, we have the Packers Junior Power Pack Clinic here in June. He's going to be, you know, attending that for the first time. Just things like that. I mean, like the Packers do a tremendous job of getting out of the community too. We've done like the Halloween stuff, and it is about football and it is about Sundays and tickets and all those sort of things. But being ingrained in the culture too is I think something, especially our community outreach department has done an amazing job with, and you know, getting out there even during COVID, you know, like with the Halloween stuff, you know, we drove the car around the parking lot and got to see all the, you know, get the trick or treat candy and everything. But yeah, and it's only gotten better as I've gotten older. I mean, with having Titletown, with having some of these other things, it you know, it really does. It's a cool thing to be a part of, and I think that's what adds to it. And ultimately, that's what makes everyone's going to cheer for whatever team they want to cheer for. But when you have more of a vested interest and you really feel like a team is connected with you, you know, that's why I got to be a huge Brewer fan in the 2000s, right? I mean, as they were making that rally, you know, underneath you know, that wave with Prince Fielder and Ryan Brunt. Well, it was also the way that they got on the community and the way you felt connected to that team, which was something that I think for a lot of years people didn't have.
Yeah.
What about the Bucks? Are you a Bucks fan?
Well, I am when they made their championship run 2 years ago. I have a good friend of mine, Stephen Huddy. Shout out to Stephen. He works in our social media department. He is a ride or die Bucks fan. He's down. It seems like he's down at Fiserv like every other day. I think half his paycheck goes to the Bucks. So I can't claim to be a fan like Steven is a fan, but certainly I'm the guy that ramps it up during the playoffs and follows them. When I was younger, I was a huge Bucks fan. I loved watching the big three with, you know, Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell. Got my heart ripped out a little bit when that all fell apart, and then eventually slowly found my way back. But we have some people that are you know, Spoff is an absolute diehard Brewers fan. So like, I always am careful with saying I'm a fan because like those guys are like, okay, the Brewers get their butts kicked, they're in a bad mood that day, or the Bucks, you know, they lose, you know, Giannis goes down. That's the earth just shook, you know, like for me, it's kind of like, oh, Giannis got hurt. Dang, you know? So yeah. Now UFC, I know you guys don't want to talk about that, but like UFC is what I get down with. So
oh, really?
That's my release sport when I want to not think about football for a little bit.
That's fighting, right?
It is fighting. Yeah.
Okay.
When you're 5'0", 100 like me, you find ways to like get your adrenaline ramped up, things that you can't physically do. So
that's all right. That's all right. We don't judge here. We don't judge. I'm pretty into I mean, I like basketball too. And out here we have the Lakers, so that's always been, you know, you have a winning team, but so I wasn't paying a ton. My brother is a big Bucks fan. My brother loves all sports, but big Bucks fan, and he talks about it. But and then when they did Pfizer and they have the outdoor thing, I forgot what they call that.
Deer District.
Deer District. You're like, Don, I'm going to the Deer District. What? Now what? But it's pretty cool. And
where did you grow up? Which part of Wisconsin?
Racine. So
Racine,
southeastern, yes.
See, I think that's what happens a lot too, because like I grew up in Green Bay, so naturally the Packers, that's what's easy for my parents to get to. We didn't get to a lot of Bucks games when I was a kid, and I would watch the Bulls on WGN. So like I didn't have the FSN Ballies stuff they have now. So like if I wanted to watch something, that's what I was watching. You know, I didn't really like the Cubs still, but like the Cubs were the thing that was on television.
Gotcha.
That's one thing that stinks. I mean, we're so interconnected now, but like when I was a kid, we were kind of shut out a little bit from the Milwaukee market, being able to see the Bucks and Brewers. So
yeah. So okay. So where's that town you were talking about?
which one?
Where you grew up?
I grew up in I live in Swamico. So like if this is the Wisconsin, we have Wisconsin here. I'm like this is Green Bay. I'm like right there.
Oh, okay.
I'm right up the water.
But they were showing you Bulls?
Yeah, so WGN,
Yeah,
just
WGN.
because back when I was younger, there were no like I think the Brewers would be on every once in a while. The Bucks were never on. But I had WGN Channel 9, and every Bulls game was on television. I would watch the Bucks when the Bucks played the Bulls.
Bulls,
That's
right.
That's how I would see the Bucks. There wasn't much to watch in the 90s, but I mean, like that's when I would catch them. And nowadays, my goodness, I think you can watch. Am I right on this, Matt? You can watch like every Brewers game now, I think, or close to it. That wasn't like that when I was a kid.
I don't watch
catch a couple.
baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball, I mean, I'll go to a game. I think it's fun kind of to go.
Yeah.
But it's not. I like basketball because it's just like so active. Like there's something going on all the time. Even when I started watching football, well, what kept me from watching football, it was all the downtime. Yeah, it's like they just have a play and it's like 5 seconds and then they're regrouping and it's like, come on.
There's no sport that has benefited more from technology than football. I mean, it has shortened the game so much with just the bells and whistles and vignettes and stats and everything. If you go back and watch some of those 90s Packers games, Packers are playing good football, so that helped, but the experience changed, man, with the technology and the sports science and everything that they can do now. I mean, look at even like not Spofford. Domofsky tweets it all the time. The next gen stuff that the NFL does. I mean, it's amazing how fast the quarterback throws a ball. What is the route? What was the max speed of Christian Watson on the road?
Yeah,
that stuff is incredible now, man. It is nuts to watch.
It is. By the way, why is Domofsky your evil twin?
He's not my twin because I'm much better looking. Oh, okay. But no, so Rob and I, we go back a long way. I worked with Rob for 7 years. And then it was the summer of 2013. So I had just started covering Packers full time. And ESPN somewhere in Bristol, Connecticut was like, you know what? We're going to have an NFL reporter in every city. And they came out. They took Rob Domofsky from us. And that's when for about a year, I called him Benedict Domofsky. Eventually, I forgave him. No, Rob's one of my he's one of my best friends in this world. I give him a lot of grief. I actually kind of enjoyed doing the little banter thing with him on Twitter because I think at times people thought we were actually serious. Because there's nothing else I love more than when reporters go after each other on Twitter. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
going after with fans or an athlete. But when they start going after each other, it's like, oh Lord, nobody cares who reported what, especially now in this era. It lasts for 2 seconds and then everybody confirmed it or whatever.
Yes.
But no, Rob and I, we go back a long way. And actually it's funny. I had a chance to watch his son just won a state championship at De Pere High School in town. Yeah. And I got to every one of the tournament series games, even regional semifinals. I went to every game.
So cool.
Because I remember Rob at the Press Gazette with his photo of his 2 kids on his desk when his son Hogan, the one that won the state title, was younger than my son, probably 3. And then here he is now 6'2", much taller than Rob. Thank God for his mom's genes. But no, and the kid goes 30-0 at De Pere. I mean, that's what's fun. I think that's what a lot of people don't probably realize with media. And I'm sure it's a lot like with the blog, Packers blog people. The people that you're around are the people you get to know the most. And we spend so much time together. So that's the other thing I always think it's funny with reporters. Like if you end up having beef with reporters, well, enjoy that because you're going to have to keep working with them every day. You're going to see them more than you see your spouse. So good luck holding on to that.
I love those kind of like playful sort of interactions like that you have with Rob, or someone like Andy Herman and Peter Bukowski, for example. It's like they're good friends, but like they'll kind of go at it on Twitter, and knowing that like there's love behind it. And,
that's the coolest thing
I
though,
love this
man,
stuff.
because like again, like Andy, I freaking love Andy. Like
Mhm.
I've gotten to know him so well, and he's a huge wrestling fan like I am. We actually were at one of the shows in Milwaukee last week. It's a big fraternity or sorority, however you want to look at it. I mean, there's a bunch of us that it's cool because like I embrace that, because like when I started at the paper, I always tell that story of like my face did not appear in the Press Gazette for like 6 years. Like I was a faceless byline for a lot of years, and then next thing you know, we're doing the Insiders thing every week. We're constantly doing these videos. Like I didn't get a degree in that. I just sort of had to do it, right? And now we're just so interconnected, and I honestly think that makes it a lot of fun. I mean, just even talking with you guys, I mean,
Right.
it's a common bond that we all share in terms of the football team, but there's a lot of cool people out there too that you get to meet along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Rob.
So that made me think of another question I wanted to ask you tonight, Wes, which is in terms of Packers content, blogs or videos or podcasts, like do you like actually engage with any of that? Do you listen, like, so like, and if so yes, what are some of the so what are some of the things that you tend to pay more attention to, or read or watch or listen to or whatever?
Well, and I've like Instagram's become such a big thing now, and it'll probably become bigger with some of these developments on Twitter. And like I love Tom Grossi. I won't say that. Hopefully he doesn't see this, because I don't want him to get the compliment. But Tom is just so freaking creative, and he's so funny. I mean, the stuff he thinks of, that video he had of the where he's rapping to Stan, Eminem Stan, I was rolling at that, because it's like he does the kind of stuff that when I'm not doing that, just for the record. I will not be rapping anytime soon, but it's like, how the heck do you think of that? Like where do you get those ideas? And and I have so much admiration for Aaron Nagler too. I know that's such an easy answer, but like I've known Aaron for a really long time now, and I got to know him when he was like really hard on my boss Mike Vandermoss in his columns, and I sort of feared Aaron for a long time. But then you just kind of realize, I mean, he's an incredibly caring, wonderful human being. And, Aaron's, the way Aaron can synchronize things. And I don't know how many times you guys will do this, where if it's just yourselves or if you're just talking, but the hardest thing to do is when it's just you and a camera. And Aaron, Andy, Tom, those guys do it exceptionally well. It's really easy for me to play off of Spoff, like when we do our videos or with Larry, but like when it's just you and it's readers or people commenting, that's very difficult to do. And just trying to be engaging, but also answering their question and being thoughtful. You're wearing a lot of hats there. And I think when you look at what Aaron's done, what Andy does every freaking day, I don't know how he does that. And then just Tom's creativity. I just have so much respect for those guys and the way they go about it.
Well, the amount of work that goes into it for them, the way they hustle to like build something. I mean, Tom Grossi able to like quit his day job as a teacher to do this stuff full time. It's amazing. And like, through all of it, Tom is a great example of somebody who is still very much like, it's a person of the people. He's just a really caring person, just really great people. I mean, like, and Aaron Nagler will lean into like, some of the harsher elements of his personality, if you will. But that's like, that's just for engagement. Like, I know that, he is really like a really sweet guy, a really nice
and very level-headed. I think that's one thing Aaron doesn't get nearly as much credit for. Like, that's one thing I try to bring in with my content, because certain people are going to be like, well, you work for the Packers, so you're just going to say that. I don't lie to people. Like, I may not lambast a player the way some folks will, but I'm not going to tell you something that I don't think is actually the truth. I mean, the nice thing about covering a team with 53 players, there's a lot to focus on, right? But I think what I like what Aaron does is he straddles that line very well, and he can cover both ends of it. Because at the end of the day, one thing I've kind of found out with my content, I'm sure you guys feel it with this show too, I don't want to do a show where I'm just complaining the entire time. Like it's tough to be that person, and I feel like it's so disposable. Like it's not really an art form to complain. It's easy to complain. trying to see the positive in things, and not just the Packers, just your everyday life. Like that's always been sort of my focus on things, because we're all getting through this thing together, man. This is a difficult thing that we're doing at this very moment, and I don't want to do it just being completely ticked off all the time.
Yeah, we hear that. I mean, the big part of how we bring what we're doing here with just the show in general is trying to spread positivity and, you know, shine a light on people who are doing great work. So yeah, right there with you.
Yeah. Matt and I are both optimistic people too. Yeah. So I can't imagine but people make a lot of money and get a lot of followers by just complaining. It's crazy.
And honestly, enjoy sports however you want to enjoy sports.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I do it. You know, that's how I get through it, because if I'm ticked off all the time, like me personally, that doesn't fit well with my psyche.
No,
you know,
I can't imagine that.
That's why when Nagler does his stuff with Corey Banke, like I love that back and forth. I mean, those two are they were meant for each other in terms of not only just their energies, but I mean, just the way they see the game and sports and the rationality or irrationality sometimes of things. But again, it's cool being able to interact with all these people, because again, 10 years ago, they would have just been people's names on a forum or something, you know, and now it's you can start up your own stream and chat with people and get to know folks.
Yeah.
It's really great. So on that, did you want to be a sports writer? Did you want to be a writer? How do you differentiate between like journalism, sports journalism, and writing, and then also the whole outreach, like I call it outreach because you're at corporate, but the forward facing social media video stuff? Like,
well, it's an excellent question. That was the hardest thing I had to make a decision on back in 2016 was, did I want to be a journalist or did I want to be a sports writer? And there are a number of different ways to be a sports writer now, that you don't necessarily just have to be at a newspaper like when I was a kid growing up. And ultimately I made that decision. I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be someone that could tell stories, maybe tell you something about a player that you didn't know before, or at least make you feel like you got to know him at a deeper level. The other thing I wanted to do when I came over on this side of things, and Mike and Vic Ketchman and so many people did incredible work at Packers.com before I got here, but I wanted to be able to connect with the fan base a little more. I felt like that was one thing I did pretty well at the Press Gazette. At that time especially, I think there was a little bit of a wall that was put up between journalists and bloggers. And I wanted to sort of knock that down, especially not just because of, you know, the more people you engage with, the more people that are potentially going to want to consume your content. If you're a dick to people, like it's going to be hard for them to want to read your stuff. It doesn't matter how good it is. Right. But the other aspect of it is I really enjoy representing this organization. And I like the idea that, hey, you know, like, I enjoy being able to meet fans, because I don't really think of myself as anything. I'm just a dude from Green Bay that grew up here that got to work for the team. But people just getting talking with people at pep rallies, just being able to engage with them at training camps. I always am very sheepish about signing stuff. Remember, I was at one pep rally where somebody had me sign a cheesehead, and they already had Larry sign it. And like, I forget who the alumni was. I'm like, you realize I'm completely devaluing what you have here, right? But yet they were still super cool about it, wanted me to do it anyway. But I think that's important, because like, I really respect and appreciate that I am a part of the Packers organization now. And I want to be able to meet that standard, because it is a very high standard. And, my dad, the coolest thing for me is, being a Packers and full-time employee, we get season tickets. And my dad and I, when I was a kid, we did fine. We weren't poor or anything. I don't want to make it paint out that way, but we did not have season tickets. We did not barely get to any games. I mean, the only time I got to go to games as a kid is when we won the Brown County raffle, right? For the seats that you go sit up top. But like, my dad comes to every game now. My dad just retired last year. Like, he sits in my seats because I'm covering the games. Like, that's the coolest freaking thing.
Yeah.
And, seeing, I'll do the pregame show beforehand, Packers radio, and like, he'll come and watch us, and like, people will come up, and I can just tell how much that means to him. So, extremely long answer to your question. I tend to do that. But to answer it, yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a writer, and the coolest thing about this job is being able to interact with people and just get to know them a little bit. And you never know what that turns into either. I mean, just ask Kyle Cousineau, man. Like, some of these folks, it isn't just about the friendships. You end up there ends up being opportunities off stories off some of them. I mean, like we're all interconnected in that way, and I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. And, I want to say personally, I appreciate the engagement that you have with the Packers fans, like on Twitter and stuff like that. Like we've had some really great interactions in the past. And of course, my comments about the old like rock music that opened up the Packers Unscripted and, kind of
it was terrible. But... You're okay, man. It was bad.
So bad. That was hilarious.
It was,
and then Mike comes in. Welcome to Packers Unscripted.
It's like you're at a rock concert and then you walk into a library. That's what it was like. It was like you walked into like a Kiss concert and then it was like Natalie and Bruley on the other side of it or something. But we have a much better one now. We figured that out. And the other thing that sucked too is we were blowing people's eardrums off on the podcast. We were just getting killed on the podcast ratings because people are like, yeah, the podcast is all right. It's good, but like it's hard to listen to you after I can't hear anything because of your intro. So yeah, no, you were perfectly fine. You were within your reason to be criticizing that.
So I appreciate the engagement. And also, I also want to say that you're talking about how you want to be able to, tell these stories about these players to help people get to know them better. And one of the things that I enjoy most about, all of the content on the Packers.com website is when you do one of those like long form pieces, like really digging into somebody's story. Like I gotta say, man, those are always so good. And I love that you do those. Let me put the time and the effort into those.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I wish I could do more, honestly. Like the only problem is just Spoff and I, right? So like we do our Q&A for the Insider Inbox 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And then one of us is on vacation, then we're doing it every day. So it sometimes can be hard, but I try to do at least 3 of them a year, if not 4. I got to get my button gear because I haven't done one yet this year. I have some ideas, but I haven't written it yet. But that's the coolest thing because it ranges from like the story I did with Mercedes Lewis last year is going to go down as one of my favorites.
That was a good one.
And, just his mom and the strength that she had, having him when she was as young as she was and being out on her own and lying to get a 1-bedroom studio apartment in Los Angeles. And the things she put herself through to make sure he had, those are the best stories. Because it gives you an idea of who these people are now, how they got to this point. And then, I can talk about a number of them, but I thank you for saying that. Cause that's one of the most fun parts about this job when you can kind of peel back the layers a little bit and understand players. And I'm so incredibly thankful to the people that have sat down with me and talked about that. Cause it isn't always the most fun to sit down and talk about yourself for an hour or whatever, and really have me diving into things. But, him and, Mason Crosby's been incredibly open over the years. I mean, there's so many cool dudes in that locker room Aaron Jones' dad, God rest his soul. Elvin was one of the kindest dudes ever. I still have one of the text messages he sent me after my son was born, and just some really cool people. And it's neat to be able to tell some of their stories because, I wish I could do them all, but there's only a few that are going to be able to get through and try to show people who these guys are.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people know about Jordan Love's dad and his family.
Yeah. Jordan. Yeah. And I know a little bit was written about that when Jordan got drafted, and certainly a difficult situation in that regard. But again, so much respect for his mom and how she's, been kind of his guiding light. And I know everybody jokes about that video of her being up at the very top of Arrowhead.
Oh my God.
By the way, that's typically what happens with the opposing team's family.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually the last row, so to speak, but sometimes the seats. I actually got tickets for a buddy of mine to the Jacksonville game a couple years ago, and they said that they're like, man, we're really up there. I'm like, yeah, they don't do us any favors when we're on the road. You want to come to a game, I'll get you close at Lambeau. I can't do much for you on the road, though. But but again, and I'm sure that, a lot's going to be written this upcoming year on Jordan. I'm sure everybody's sort of plotting their stories and whatnot, but I'm just excited to see the young man get the opportunity and see what he does with it. Because again, 24 years old, he has a long story too. And to be able to get to this point, there's so many people that have contributed to that.
That's right. So on that writer thing, on that writer part, so Wayne Larrivee wrote "If These Walls Could Talk."
Yeah.
And I've often wanted to be a fly on the wall, especially these last few years in the locker room, especially. Do you think you would ever write a book about your experiences, or maybe would you probably when you're retired? Or
I'll
is
do
that
one. Yeah, I'll do one book. I've already said that before. I will write one book, and it'll be when I'm done.
okay?
Hopefully, I live long enough. We'll see. Knock on wood. But I think one of the greatest tragedies was the fact that Lee Remmel never wrote a book. And Lee's a guy that I absolutely idolize, and I love his story. I think a lot of I will never compare myself to Lee, but he started very early at Channel Leader and Green Bay Press Gazette, and he saw everything from the infancy of the Green Bay Packers on, and there was so much that was lost to history. Now he the Packers media guy, the history of the Packers, he has his fingerprints on a lot of it, but there's a lot of stories out there that were talked about and brought, mentioned, but were never put down on paper. I would love to do that someday. If something made sense and, to write a book on somebody or something, it'd be cool to do. I know Mercedes' mom mentioned that to me afterwards, after I did his profile. And I was incredibly honored that she said that, but it's like, I don't know if I'd have the time to do something like that, but
it's a lot.
It is like, there are stories that I'm going to want to make sure reported well, not just like all hearsay and crap, but
right.
I want to make sure if there's stuff that I feel like I can give back when I'm done, I can do that, because the problem is we have Cliff right now, and Cliff is amazing. He's amazing. Yeah. But there's only so many of us in terms of the people that have been in the trenches with this thing. And, Ryan Wood is right there with me in terms of age, but if there's something I feel like when I'm done that I can give that would be beneficial to the Packers history, I definitely want to do that. Cause I think that was one of the things that unfortunately got lost with Lee, that there's going to be a chapter of the Packers history that we're just fully not going to be able to get back.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'll put in a pre-order on that book today. So.
Yeah.
It'll be what was Cliff's book was what, greatest story in sports. Mine will be like the greatest story in sports continued, or the never ending greatest story in sports.
Yeah, 100%. Oh man, there's just been so much intrigue, and I mean the fans want to know stuff,
Yeah. Well, and like the stuff that Cliff knows, and that's why I'm so happy and thankful for Cliff, because he has so much knowledge, and when his time ends on the spaceship, hopefully in 40 years, I think he's going to have all of it down on paper, at least most of it. I mean, between his oral histories, he's right now currently writing every bio of Packers Hall of Famers on our website right now. Incredibly valuable tool for now, but then in the future, I mean, those things are going to be, they're going to live forever. Yeah. Because he knows players from the 30s and 40s and 20s, like nobody else's business that's even alive right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love what Cliff is doing, and if there's any way down the line to build upon that legacy, I would love to do that.
Cool. I can imagine that most teams have a Cliff.
Not to that level, man.
No,
I mean, I'm sure teams have. I'm sure there's some historians out there, and Hall of Fame curators that are very, very detailed and experienced and knowledgeable. But Cliff is a journalist. I mean,
yeah.
When the Packers brought him on board, we were joking. Pete Doherty my former colleague Pete Doherty had a great line when Cliff left to go to the Packers, because he was writing a column for us once a week with Eric Bronchick at the Press Gazette, kind of analysis of games and whatnot. And when Cliff left to become the Packers historian, Pete had this wonderful one-liner where she's like, man, if Cliff Crystal was still alive, he'd be rolling around right now with you taking this job, because if there was ever a guy that was never going to go work for the Packers, you would have thought it'd been Cliff. But they let him do history right, and they wanted Mark Murphy, to his credit, wanted the Packers history correct. Cliff has righted so many things that were wrong in the Packers history, and he's going to be one of the most important key figures, I think, in terms of being able to chronicle things that happened in this team's history, especially in the pre-60s era, before the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Cool. Ooh, it's exciting. It's exciting to know he's there, and I mean, it's the Packers. They have to do it right. They're held to like such a higher standard than any other team.
Well, and even just going through his book, I mean, I've learned so much over the last year, and I still haven't finished it. I have more work to do on that thing yet. I get a lot of books, and it's sometimes hard to kind of work through all of them. but I got to do it because I think that is going to be that's the definitive thing. I mean, it is
Mhm.
it is the biggest project that I think anybody has ever tackled, and Cliff did it incredibly well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, so can we just talk about Larry McCarron's pinky, or is that off limits? Because it really
We
doesn't.
can talk about his pinky. My favorite Larry story probably is going to be we were at the owners meetings. I think this was in 2019. I mean, Larry plays into it a little bit, okay? Like when he does his count, when he counts the
Oh yeah, I know.
With the pinky. But my favorite, we're going around coaches' breakfast at the owners meetings. I think Arizona or Florida, whatever. We go to John. He goes to John Harbaugh's table, and he Ravens coach. And I think we still have it on the website. John Harbaugh is not looking at all. He's just looking at that the entire time. He just says to him, he goes, "Warhorse injury, isn't it?" And it darts out. And that was the one thing that I still have.
All right, so I don't know if
Pretty
Wes
cool deal.
you kind of freezing. You're freezing on us there, Wes.
Am I back?
There we go. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
In and out, kind of. Whoop.
Test. Should I sign off and come back on?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's see if that works.
Okay, hold on.
Right.
With me.
Don, that's hilarious they brought up.
I want to know. Like, I'm so glad I'm not the only one who's like, what the heck is going on? There's a guy on Twitter that has that as his name. Did you know that?
Pinky? No, I didn't know that.
So for those of you who are watching, if you don't know what Larry McCarron's pinky is, let us know in the comments.
It's a 90-degree angle.
Well, oh
Straight
man,
up,
Larry
it is
McCarron played for the Green Bay Packers
for a long time. He
now works as one of the announcers, and I listen to Larry and Wayne religiously. Wes is back, but he's all white. What's going on there? They do the broadcasts every Sunday of the game locally. Why is he white?
I'm gonna try to bring him in and see what happens.
We can try.
He's loading.
We can't see you. I'll take him off for now. So yeah. So what a great conversation we're having with Wes Hodkiewicz.
My goodness.
So generous with his time and his thoughts and open. It's just fantastic. Let's see.
Let's see if Wes back here. Shoot.
He left.
Maybe he's looking at his router or something. I don't know. We'll see. But hopefully we'll be back in just a second here. This is, of course, the beauty of doing a show live and relying on technology and not editing the show afterwards. So
all good. It's all good. We're getting close to the end. Hey, Maddie, why don't you share your? Should I share my superlatives while we're waiting?
Yeah, why don't you go? That'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay. So my first superlative while we're waiting is the best sign of spring since Groundhog Day. And that's Packers Unscripted. Packers Unscripted is back, and Weston is calling Mike Michael. And so they came back today. And
I think there's a second episode back, actually.
Yeah, and then so they came back with their early round prospect names for wide receiver, tight ends, offensive line, and edge rusher. So it was a nice episode. And thank you for letting me know that, because I didn't catch it until today for some reason. But yeah, so best sign of spring is, and that means, as I did my calculations, that football is only 4 months away, 16 weeks.
Crazy.
It seems better if you do 16 weeks, because weeks fly by really fast. Right?
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, I was so happy to see Packers Unscripted show up in my podcast feed. what was that actually? The first episode was, I can't remember if it was earlier this week or if it was late last week. It must have been earlier this week. We did 2 episodes so far since coming back, and yeah, I really wish I could that Wes were here so I could like give him these compliments. But like, I do love the show for the rapport that he and Michael have together. Michael and Weston.
Michael from The Office is what I think.
Like, they really play off each other really nicely, and it's just really fun to listen to. One of the things I really appreciate about them is the complete lack of hot takes. It's all very,
That's right.
very level-headed, very clear-eyed sort of things that they bring to it in a way that I feel like a lot of times it's kind of refreshing compared to a lot of the content that we might consume. It is really appreciated.
Yeah.
So I got a message here that Wes's VPN is being weird, so he's restarting his computer, I think. So we'll probably with us soon. But while we're waiting, should I do one of my superlatives here, Dawn?
Well, I'll grab my second one real quick, and then
go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So my next superlative of the week for you all is the best non-NFL Twitter thread, and this goes to the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. And let me just give you an example of what they did. So Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation posted a really adorable video, just a little short clip, like quarter of a minute clip. And it says, "Oh, hey, it's been a while since we've screamed a wildlife fact at you guys." I love this guy. I love whoever's doing their social media. Clears throat, all caps. The red fox breeding season may start as early as January and result in an average of 3 to 6 kits after 51 days later. The litter then ventures from the den after about a month and soon learns to hunt for rodents, insects, and berries. Hilarious thread, because everyone commenting evidently was on board with this, and everyone, Wes is back, everyone was commenting, for example, in all caps, "If you don't yell at us, how will we learn?" And they answer back, "High volume learning equal high quality learning." I mean, it was just, I couldn't even stand it. It was super funny, and I will share that in the show notes along with my previous superlative. But yeah, super funny. I wasn't following them. I don't even know why they showed up in my feed. I do follow a lot of wildlife conservation or Twitter accounts, but this one was hilarious. Hi, Wes, you're back.
Yeah, I can give you my superlative now. I have the worst VPN, I think, in the National Football League. That's what ticks me off the most about our VPN sometimes. My internet didn't even kick out. My VPN like knocked me off of my. So then when the VPN goes, it's like we're in the Matrix now. You have like one level on top of another now.
Right.
But long story short, Larry McCarran has a screwed up picky. People love it. I used to see it when I was a kid, and everybody asks about it. So he's the man.
I can't look at it. It literally, I can't with that.
I can't look away from it when he's on.
I know that's what most people. I'm like,
and it's literally, it literally. I mean, there's some atrophy I think involved with it too. But I mean, it's basically just from breaking too much. And there was some. I mean, you go back. There's some players from that era. They all have that same freaking pinky. And
wow,
Larry played through a lot, man. I mean, Larry McCarran's the greatest storyteller I've ever been around. He has some incredible ones.
I watch the game, but I listen on the radio. I listen to Wayne and Larry. I have to mute the national broadcast. I can't with that. I just can't.
Yeah.
I have to have Larry and Wayne. And on some games that I don't get out here, it happens once in a while. I just listen to them on the radio, and it's wonderful. It's like being back in the 60s.
They're the two best. I mean, and I grew up listening to Wayne because with the when he was doing the bowls and things like that. But I mean, just one of the most naturally talented. The thing I love too is he works in a business where it's so many people that like contrive their voice or whatever. And I know Larry always tells the same thing. That's Wayne. That voice is Wayne. You talk about a guy that had a natural gift for what he does. Yeah. It's Wayne Larrabee. Yeah. And they're perfect. And it's crazy that they've been together as long as they have now, 25 years, whatever it's been. Yeah. I mean, that's who I grew up with. As much as people grew up with Jim Irwin and Max McGee, that's mostly what I remember from my childhood.
The best. Let them know they have one big fan over here in California listening to them. And then
when they sure to do that.
when WTMJ is like, you can't listen to the Packers game anymore, I was like, what? But I know I can still listen to now on Packers. Thankfully, on Packers.com, they better never get rid of that. I'll
Please.
die. I will literally die.
I'm so happy and thankful they did that because I mean it's incredible.
Yeah, it's
incredible.
So good.
Absolutely.
I was so worried. How am I going to listen? I need them. In fact, I think I even messaged Wayne, or called him out in the comments, like, "Are you kidding? You're leaving? Like, how am I going to listen to the game?"
I think Wayne gave some people a heart attack there with his sign off originally, but
I know.
Yeah, those guys are amazing. And yeah, I'm really happy. Like, it's been cool doing the Packers.com thing. I mean, seeing those numbers, because we get all the metrics and everything, people are so engaged with that. And it's something people ask for so long. I know I looked for it too, because you had IXX in town, but if you weren't on your radio, there wasn't a lot of, opportunities to hear them. So it's good that they're there.
And I'm glad they didn't block out people from out of town.
Yeah.
Out here.
Yeah.
Because there's so many Packer fans where I live.
And credit to the NFL too. They've done a better job of that too. With some of the things, if you have like NFL Plus and things, like you can hear more of the local calls now.
Right.
But yeah, it's a blessing for us to have it on the website because I know people have really enjoyed it for sure.
Well, yes. So my two superlatives, you didn't miss much. One was a what was it? The first one is
the first one. We were talking about Packers Unscripted for the whole time. Wes, we were saying nice things. It's too bad you'll have to go back and catch the audio of this later or something. But no,
it was the best sign of spring since Groundhog Day. Packers Unscripted is back. And then best non-NFL Twitter thread goes to Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, and I'm not going to do that one again because it's actually all caps and you're supposed to scream it, and I did, and I'm sorry for those who are listening. So Maddie,
but thank you.
And Weston, I think that was my last. I'm sorry, we do have two final questions, but
we have at least one more question for Wes, I'm sure. Right?
I forgot about that. Okay, let's go back. Two final questions. Can you handle two more?
Yeah, as long as my internet can. Am I still coming through okay for you guys?
Yeah, totally you're fine now. Yeah.
Totally fine.
Just tell me to stop if I end up getting
if I go like that or something. Yeah, I mean it was sort of like in waves, and then okay. So one of our final questions is about the beloved Packer online community, including fans. Most of us are fans. One thing you love the most, one thing you would change if you could.
I absolutely love the amount of engagement with people and how people promote you. I mean, Matt Ramage is another one of my all-time favorites. Awesome dude. And I put out my reel earlier. He's the one that sort of was motivating me and sort of pushing me to do stuff on Instagram. These people are so much more talented than I am, and I kind of pluck from a lot of them. I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are, and being able to pull from all that is awesome. The one thing I guess I would probably change about it, and it's not just exclusive to the online community, it's exclusive to everybody. It's just so many people thinking they know so much when in reality we always know so little. And as long as you acknowledge what you don't know, no problem whatsoever. I mean, Andy's perfect. Herman is perfect on this. Gives you his opinion, throws it down with the caveat that he doesn't have all the answers. There's a lot of folks out there that do think they have a lot of the answers. And I don't really like the parroting of a lot of that stuff. That's one of the things I would probably change if I could, but you got to take it all, I mean, the good and the bad, it all kind of flows together. But I absolutely do love the interconnectedness and just being able to really meet people that otherwise you probably would have never crossed paths with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the fact that Dawn and I could, meet halfway across the country from each other, it's amazing. The interconnectedness. It really is remarkable.
Yeah. And you'd think, like you even joked about, I mean, I would have thought you guys are down the block from each other. I mean, that's the way things are,
Yeah. That's great. That's a good answer. Everyone offers a little bit different take on that one. I'm looking for your last questions. Okay, so I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Okay, so how do the people in your life, your special people in your life, support you and help you do all the extra you do for the Packer community, including being here tonight for a very long time, which we really appreciate. So
no, that's all my wife. So credit to my wife, Kate. She has been with me on this road since the very beginning. We actually are a year apart in high school from each other. I do not like putting my family on social media at all. I'm very protective of them. Some people do, and they're cool. That's their prerogative. That's my life. I don't really want to be out and doing this. Like I like talking about Packers and that. I don't really like showing a lot of my personal side of things. So my wife probably doesn't get as much credit as she deserves for a lot of this, but Katie and I have been together since high school, and she's been the motivating factor for me in this business since the very beginning. When I worked at the Press Gazette and I missed her senior prom or senior ball, when she went down to Marquette and I stayed up here to chase my dream and did the long distance thing for 5 years. And then even now, when you go, it's like anybody in a, relationship, or, when one person has to leave at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning to fly somewhere and they're not going to get back until 2 a.m. on Monday morning, it takes the other spouse and it takes the people in your life and your support system to be able to help raise a kid and stay committed. And Katie has been my rock through all that and the ups and downs and mentally keeping me strong. And it was cool when I made that switch to the Packers, because that was a decision that we had to make together. We knew we wanted to raise a family in Green Bay, and if you're going to do that, there's no better place to work than the Packers, and she's been fully supportive of that entire journey. So she deserves every amount of credit possible for supporting me, standing by me, and continuing to guide me through the bad days, because there are tough days. I mean, it's still a job, and there's still things that are going to come up, and she has been really the one that makes this all work. Because if you don't have a supportive partner that's going to be willing to stand by you when you're working ridiculous hours during the season, right, the whole thing ain't going to come together very well.
Yeah, Wes, that was beautiful.
My goodness, I know.
Yeah, we try.
Well said.
Do you mind if I ask how old your kid? How many kids do you have?
We have one child. He's 5 years old. Yeah, we had one kiddo. Funny too. He was born in the game against Carolina. Yeah, so I went to Cleveland the week before in 2017. I almost went to Carolina too. He was supposed to be born on Christmas Eve. And last minute they told me I couldn't go. They didn't want me to risk it. And then sure enough, he ended up being born midway through the second quarter in that game. It seems silly now, but if you think back on it, it was a big deal because Rodgers came back from the collarbone that day.
That's right.
The second collarbone.
Yes.
So the Packers still had a playoff chance at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't miss that for the world. And credit to the Packers. They were the ones that kind of pushed me away from going, and credit to Mike, because he ended up covering everything that day in what ended up being. I mean, think about that. If I would have missed my child's birth to cover a game in which the Packers got their butts kicked, Rodgers threw 3 interceptions and their playoff hopes got dashed. So I could cover that.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know. But yeah, we got a little energetic 5-year-old rolling around. So I actually thought for a second that you guys might end up hearing him a little bit, but he finally did go down to death, so.
Not at all. I love it. Well, that's beautiful. I love asking that question. It's just because we know there's a lot that goes into what we do,
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of sacrifices that get made with all that stuff. And
absolutely.
I'd like to think hopefully I've done some stuff to make her life easier too, but yeah, I mean, it's a huge part of it, because in order to chase a dream, if you're going to be with somebody, they got to kind of be on board with that dream as well, or with you on it. Right. So she's been every story I've written, she's been with me on it. So
I love that.
Awesome.
Well, another nice thing by asking these questions is we sort of get to know your person a little bit, by asking the question, have a little more dimension. Because that's what we want for our audience, to get to know you better a little bit, appreciate a little bit more than what they might be seeing if they're just looking, look at what you're doing for the Packers.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and it's funny. I'll tweet at some people, but for the most part, my personality is mostly within. I don't think I show it. If you look at my Twitter, I think it's pretty much either retweeting my stuff from work or occasionally throwing in a couple of things or promoting a story. Kudos to Nagler. Kudos to some of these folks that will tweet like 1,000 things. I usually will just jump in and make a silly comment once every week or something like that. But yeah, it's neat. It's a part of it. Cause I mean, ultimately, we are the people that have kind of been tasked with covering the team, and it's cool to actually understand where we come from. Cause we have a lot of cool stories too. I mean, I was fortunate enough to live here and grow up here. Yeah. But Matt Schneidman's out from the East Coast. Rob's from Chicagoland. Pete Doherty's from Madison. I mean, like Ryan's from Indiana. I mean, we all kind of come from different walks of life to find ourselves in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's crazy how this world works.
You're really the outlier. Most people are coming from somewhere else, right?
Yeah, especially on the TV side of thing, especially. Very few have grown up in Green Bay and then been able to, that one especially. Typically, you got to kind of go through take your lumps at some really small stations and work your way up. But I get that. And I think that's what kind of drills it home for me, is that I just realize how incredibly freaking lucky I am that I've been able to do this in Green Bay the entire time without having to move from home. So
yeah, that's amazing.
My parents I could get in my car and be at my parents' house in 5 minutes. I mean, that's just insane. So cool. A lot of people don't have that kind of privilege.
Right.
So true.
Very cool. Very nice. Well, we appreciate getting to know you a little bit better. And now we want to find out what your best of and your worst of was for the week. And we'll start with Maddie to kind of warm you up. I've already done my in. So.
Easy with it a little bit.
Easy in, see what you think.
Well, I have 3. I'll do one, and then if you want to jump in with one, Wes, go ahead. But if you want me to kind of just keep rolling, whatever you feel.
Are we starting with best, or is it just random, or what do I do here?
Mine are always super positive, so
yeah, we tend to be positive. Once in a while, we'll be like, I mean, I've talked about Dan Snyder.
I was gonna say it's never about the Packers.
Oh, sure,
Dan Snyder.
Hey, positive. The Commanders got a new owner.
Yeah. Yay!
I know.
Good stuff.
We talked
finally.
About
oh yeah. So anyhow, my first one is coolest stat. So this was from an article that Paul Noonan wrote. Of course, since his podcast is kind of on hiatus for the moment, I haven't had as many chances to talk about him lately. So I was glad that he put this really great article out here. It was about the draft using the WROPS and the WRAPS stats to figure out who are the most overrated and also the most underrated wide receivers in the draft. And so these stats I had never heard of before. They are Paul Noonan is like, he's really like deep in spreadsheets and analytical thinking. He's remarkable. And so the stat that he developed is kind of borrowing from baseball. So the WROPS is wide receiver. And then the OPS part is from baseball. And that is the on base plus slugging, I guess, and I'm not as familiar with this because I'm not as much of a baseball person, but it's a stat from baseball. So he's using an approach kind of with that, looking at wide receivers and their production that they did for the draft you were talking about, of course, like the prospects. And so using that approach, and then also an altered version of that, the WRAPS, where he adds that to the RAS score, from Kentley Platte, to get the data on these various players. And so I don't want to get into y'all should read the articles, so I'm not gonna give away who he found out about, but it's worth checking out because it's really eye-opening. Some of these people who we're hearing a lot about that, it's like, well, the numbers, at least from how Paul's looking at it, don't really bear it out. And then these other people who I had never even heard of, deep in the draft, who actually might be people to watch out for. So, obviously a lot of the draft coverage is about those kind of first 2-round people, the really exciting, future stars. So when we have articles like this that help you learn more about some of those people way deep down on the consensus big boards, I find that completely fascinating. And of course, with this analytical approach, with this, these metrics that Paul Noonan devised, that's amazing stuff.
Wow.
Kudos to them too, because back when they sabermetrics became a big thing in Major League Baseball, I was really into that. But I became a complete laggard with football as opposed to analytics and things like that. I don't know why. Maybe it just seemed a little too complicated for me. But the things that they dig up, and I think about Connor Lewis with the Packers and some of the folks now in our analytics department. I mean, they are so far and above what I thought analytics were. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that it drives the game, but I mean, it's a part of the process now. And I think one thing we've learned is there's really not, and there's so many, you can't ever go wrong by looking through and looking underneath all these rocks to see if there's something potentially there, because a lot of times there ends up being stuff. So yeah, that's definitely a good one. I guess for me, I don't know if I have a story this week that stands out to me. I guess the one thing I will give credit to, because I ripped on his age earlier, but Spoff put together our prospect primers, and I voiced a few of them. But kudos to Mike, man. He's actually the one that dug through and did all the research and wrote up our little bios. And it is a labor of love, because those things, they aren't our biggest content. They don't drive the most amount of content on our website. But if the Green Bay Packers take any of those guys, I swear that'll be the biggest piece of content we'll have all week. Like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, when we took, I think we had one for Jair 5 years ago. People, they have no idea who Jair Alexander is, and now they want to know everything about him, right? After the Packers take him. And kudos to Mike. He's usually the one that drives all that. So we don't have cool analytics stuff, but the stuff that Mike does put together for that on our website, definitely something I give him credit for. Not the funnest superlative, but if I'm ripping on a guy's age and things like that and talking about how he's not good with technology, I figure I should throw him some type of bone. So there it is.
Throw a bone. I love Mike. He's so straight. Like, I just want to tickle him. Is he ticklish?
Yeah, I've not tried. I can check tomorrow.
Just kind of loosen him up, you know?
Next thing I know, HR is going to be calling me.
That's a Title IX situation, Don.
Sorry. No, you know what I mean? Like, just, you just want to make him laugh. You know,
I love Mike too, because like with Twitter, I remember there was somebody, I forget if it was Michael Cohen or who it was, but somebody was like, man, Spoff doesn't follow me on Twitter. I'm like, dude, don't take offense to it. I don't think Mike even knows how to follow people. Like, it's just not his thing. And he's like, yeah. And I remember telling him, he's like, oh, I feel terrible about it. He goes and follows. He's like, I had no idea. I wasn't even following. I'm like, he's a bird flying in the air of life out there. He's just doing his own deal. So.
I love that.
All right, I'll do my next one then. This is because I have a question for you. Wes, are you familiar with Erin Ellis on Twitter? She does some amazing memes, very funny.
I am now. Dude, her one she had a couple days ago had me rolling. I actually followed her right after it. It's funny. Nice. If you would have told me her name probably 36 hours ago, I don't know if I would have known who that was. But then I forget even which one it was. Dude, it was so funny. Like, that's the other thing too. I gave credit to like Kerman and all the Ingrassi and all these people. Her, Sam. Oh my gosh, there are so many Packers. There's. I wish I could think of all of them. Right. So many people that are so freaking funny on that medium. So yes, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. So, and I think you're talking about the same meme that I'm talking about is the one with, she took Jordan Love with like pulling Mark Murphy on the sled again. Like Mark Murphy on the tube.
Say what it was, but I didn't see.
Mark Murphy on the tube is like Aaron's like signature thing for memes, and so like pulling him like down the sledding hill. Just one of her finest ones in a long
is that
time.
all photo? I mean, it's just like Photoshop or what? I mean, like I was like, oh my Lord, it was.
I can do that kind of stuff on my phone actually. Yeah, no, that's and she's very very funny and very skilled at that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, she's a great follow. She has a couple of podcasts she does, by the way, that are definitely worth checking out. I'm just gonna go ahead and like promote her stuff for a second. So
no doubt. I mean.
We love Erin.
Yeah, she has Last Call Lambo, which is on Game On Wisconsin. It's every other week in the off season, but every Friday then during the season. Her and Sam and Monty Moore are the people who do that show. She also has On Brand and Off Topic, which is with Todd and Jimmy, who you know. And so that show is currently on hiatus for the off season, and she also does a thing called.
I thought it was on hiatus because Jimmy got canceled or something.
That might also be true. Jimmy's mustache got canceled.
I love him,
one of his crop tops. But
you know what I want to say? I want to say this because you asked me earlier about what I could change about the blogosphere. This is what stinks. there are so many cool people that I've met, and it's taken too long to meet them because it's so much bigger than it was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like there was a time where it was just like everybody was just on Cheesehead, or they did Jersey Al's deal. And now it's like Game On Wisconsin popped up and all these different things. And like, I feel so bad because like, I feel like there's a lot of folks out there that I should know of and I don't yet. And that is the one thing that stinks. Like, even like you mentioned, Aaron, like I'm sure I saw some of her stuff before, but like, it's so difficult now because it isn't just like, okay, it's not just like Nagler and these people and then that's it. It's like there's such a huge, vast amount of people that are creating content now, which is awesome. Yeah. But it also sometimes I feel like a douche because then I'm like, oh, I didn't know them right away, you know, like. But that's probably just a product of me getting old too. So
there's a lot. That's why Matt and I have this show though, because there's so much content just of people creating Packers content.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. So,
and it's not like that in other cities. Like, I think that's the other thing. I don't know if Packer fans realize they are so lucky, the amount of people that are talking about their football team and that people are engaging with that content. I remember talking to some folks down in Atlanta with the Falcons. You know, the Packers, it's very difficult to get a credential for the Packers. There's just too many outlets, credentialed outlets to begin with, in addition to allowing quote unquote bloggers or anything.
Right.
Honestly, the Falcons, they would allow anybody into their locker room that was remotely attached to an Acme Packers type thing. They would be credentialed down in Atlanta just because there's only a certain couple. The TV stations don't even go and cover them every day. It's in Atlanta. There's other things to do. Green Bay, man, the amount of folks that are committed to the team and can talk intelligently about the team is just out of this world.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And it pushes me because it's like, well, I got to do better content then, because if my stuff sucks, then they're just going to go to Andy. They'll just go to Tom. They'll go to some of these other people that can put out better stuff. So I try to use the strengths that I have.
They go to all of these things though. That's the thing. It's an embarrassment of riches. But I think one thing I think a lot of people will say, Wes, to your credit, is that like the insider inbox, I think, is like a daily thing for most of the Packers fans, you know, who are plugged into Twitter, into like the the blogosphere. Like, everyone reads that thing every day, man. You know, it is great stuff. So definitely credit to you on that.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I took the job in 7 or 16, I didn't realize that Vic did that column every day.
Yeah.
I really didn't know
sometimes twice a day. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
It's hyperventilating right now thinking about doing that twice a day. I should have did better research because I didn't realize that he did it 6 days a week. I thought it was like a once a week column. And when I realized when I signed up for, I'm like, holy cow. Because the thing is I'm not Vic and Mike isn't Vic. We're all going to have our different flavors, but I always feel like I got to give a strong effort for that thing. We'll write that thing 2,500 words, sometimes close to 3,000 because of the amount of every day. It doesn't matter if it's in season or out of season. People are submitting into that. I don't know if they just want to get published on the website. We have an incredible international following too. There are so many people. I got to remind myself of that. There's a lot of folks out there that, no disrespect to the Green Bay Press Gazette or the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, there's a lot of people that they're international Packer fans. They just want to go to Packers.com and read what we have on our website because they don't know everything else. And some are going to be insatiable and want everything, right? But some people are just going to, that is the one thing that blew me away. When you get people submitting questions from Brazil, you get people from Uruguay, from, London, you feel like you get to know these folks. And that is the neatest thing, because if it's not for that connection, inbox would be a hassle, just with the amount of work that goes into it while trying to do all your other stuff. Yeah. But that's what makes it enjoyable, is you get to know those folks. And then we go and do these pep rallies, and then, Dar from Mansfield shows up and wearing a Dar from Mansfield shirt. Dean from Leavenworth. I mean, Lori from Brookfield. These folks, you get to know them,
Yeah.
And that's again, it goes back to the interconnectivity. I mean, that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh. So well said. All right. Well, I have one more superlative, but Wes, do you want to throw one out there before I do, or should I go ahead?
No, I'll use that last one as my superlative. You take it away.
Yeah, you kind of got into it. Was like a backdoor superlative. That's great.
Yeah, it was a backdoor superlative.
Yeah.
My worst thing of the week is I don't know every human that walked the earth. That's my worst thing.
How dare you? Oh, my last superlative is best article for the people. And by the people, I mean, the people who aren't like super huge into the draft, and like, you know, Dawn and I have said this almost every week for the last 2 months, like we have so much respect for the people who are grinding the film and doing the ratings and all the stuff. That's not us, you know. So this is an article for us, you know. It was an article that Tim Backus, who by the way was on the show a while back. He was fantastic, really great guy. So Tim wrote an article for Cheesehead. It was called "The Best Parts of the Draft When You Know Nothing About the Draft," and it was very funny. You know, Tim's kind of typical thing where like it's really well written, but like funny and informative, and just like a really entertaining read. So
Yeah,
highly recommend that one. If you haven't checked that out, folks, definitely check out Tim's writing on Cheesehead.
I love that. I think I'll read that before I cram, because I feel like I've taken like a couple weeks. So we did the mock draft, and then I just like took a draft vacation for my brain. And I'm into true crime, Wes. So I'm into true crime, and so I'm like into. And today I got kind of snotty on Twitter. Me and Katie kind of got snotty on Twitter, which I don't normally do. So I don't know. I was just in a mood. But anyway, so I've got to get back into the draft. I had a cram for the next week.
Absolutely.
That's right.
You just got to find that crossover now between true crime and the draft.
That's
See if you can find
every
something
day
that
of my life. It is a true crime. I have all these. It would be a true crime if. Yeah. Oh God, the punchlines kind of write themselves with me in true crime and football. It's pretty funny. And I wasn't that's the weird thing. You want to get to know me, Wes. I wasn't into football or true crime and then COVID kind of just like made both of those things happen for me.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy.
You know what's fun too? As much as COVID sucked, it crystallized a lot of moments though too. Probably because there wasn't a lot going on for a bit. But like even being in this room, like I remember everything about that weekend and trying to cover an NFL draft with our when we cover a draft, we're all in the same room within arm's reach of all of us. Our web stories, our quick recaps, press conferences right in front of us. That time was wild in that we had to all communicate on Slack and everything. And, you know, we were still doing like conference call type interviews. We weren't doing Zoom yet. That is going to be one that I'll always remember forever. And honestly, I think it's something I agree with you with. I think it helped actually even heighten my love for football just because of how much I dove into it that year with how everything sort of slowed down.
Yeah.
I do have a request. This came up because of COVID. So, okay, I'm going to make it. This just came to my mind. During COVID, because of the Zoom calls, when a reporter would ask a question in a press conference, we could hear the question.
Yes.
As well as the answer.
And they would say the reporter's name, which I loved.
And the reporter's name, right. But we've gone back to not being able to hear the question, only the answer, and not knowing who asked the question.
Well, I don't know if you're going to figure out who asked the question because we're back to having just like blurred out all of our questions at LaFleur or whoever's up there. But hopefully you should hear the questions better because we actually are using the technology. We always had the I don't even know what it's called, but it's like where the microphones are in the ceiling. We always used it for the draft. It worked okay. But when we're talking to like prospects on the conference calls, we would hear it. We're using that now on our press conferences. So if you go back and watch the end of last season, you should hear it a little bit better than you did in the past.
Yeah, I agree.
Where the past, it was literally, we had one microphone in the front of the press conference room. So if Domofsky's asking something, or if I'm asking something, Bill Huber's asking something, you could hear it okay. Yeah. But if Cassidy Hill, who always likes to sit in the last row of the darn place, if she's asking something, as sweet as her voice is, you are not going to hear it. So, but we were using that technology a little bit more. So I think that has helped, but that certainly was something for a number of years that people always talked about.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to understand what they're even answering or if they're answering properly. And then I know, like at the White House, like when they do the White House, it's a small room when they do the White House daily briefing. They have to say who they are and where they're from, their name and what publication, and then they ask the question.
Yes.
So
like on Ted Lasso, it's kind of Trump independent.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing is too, is that you get into the point of the season where, like a Friday press conference, there's gonna be like 4 of us in there too. That's
Yeah.
the other aspect of it. So,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the difference with the White House stuff, because you'll get a lot of transient sort of media that'll be in there with them, in addition to the mainstays. But yeah, it would get a little bit awkward if it's like
Probably
it's me, Rob, Bill, and like Jason Wilde and. Hey, Matt, Wes Hodkiewicz, Packers Stack. I work. Yeah. What have you thought about how Shamar has sort of grown this season? That kind of thing. But I totally get your plight. It definitely, the best thing that happened for Packer fans was COVID in terms of the videos, because you got to. It worked to our detriment, because anybody who wanted to write any story had access to all of our interviews that we conducted for basically 2 years. But the downside of that was that it was a little bit harder to create like original content for a minute, but we do the best we can.
Well, I definitely figured out who the reporters got a good sense of the voices of each of the people. I could now pick out Bill Huber's voice from a crowd, or Jason Wilde's style of asking a question, that kind of stuff. If you know what I mean.
We know what you mean.
I love Jason Wilde, man. His brain.
I love it. Yeah,
dude, it's wild though. That was the weird thing about COVID, is I think people became so much more familiar with the reporters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so.
Before we were just random voices, and you probably couldn't even hear the questions most of the time. But yeah. For better or for worse, I think people got to know us a lot more during that time.
Going to the point where you have like Joey making the videos, parodying some of the reporters. So those are brilliant. So good.
He had a good time with it. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I don't ever want to do it again, but
sure.
It I think everybody kind of made the most of it. It felt natural after that first year too. So
yeah,
it was weird when that season ended.
That's an amazing thing too about COVID, that like you said, for as much as it sucked, I think that's where we really saw the explosion of the podcasts and the blogs, because people need something to do, and realized we have this technology that we're using right now, to do something like this, to connect with people, over on the West Coast, and do a weekly show like we do. I would have never thought of this as being a possibility, in February of 2020. So
and we had to. I think one thing we learned from the Packers side of things is, it's cool as it is to get Keyshawn Nixon in the studio, as cool as it is to talk to Quay Walker, which is what we did this past week for the Packers offseason update show that we're doing for Spectrum. We had to generate a lot of content amongst ourselves. Myself, Spofford, Packers Unscripted became a really good sort of flywheel for a lot of our stuff on the website, because we had now I can go right inbox, I can go call up Kenny Clark and do a story, I can do stuff. We had a lot of video people at the Packers that were kind of in a pinch, because we didn't have a lot of video stuff to generate in the age of COVID. And we did a lot of 3 Things videos that offseason. We did a lot of unscripted. We tried to create content through this medium. And I think it made us realize that, 1, there actually is a desire for that. There actually is an appetite for that. And 2, just how much, you can drive your own content. You have to be smart about it. You have to be somewhat pragmatic. You can't just throw crap against the wall and expect, a 5-star meal. But I think it allowed us to step out of our comfort zone a little bit more and understand it's okay, well, people do care about what we think, and what, we don't just need to have one interview with so-and-so. We can have some content among ourselves. That's when our 3 Things videos really blew up at that time, because a lot of people just want to hear what Larry McCarron thinks. They don't need to hear Larry asking the questions. They just want to hear what his thoughts are on the team. And at a time in which there wasn't a lot going on, and when the players are all just sitting around the country and there's really no updates. That was a really good way to pass the time. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. I always want to hear what Larry has to say. Man. Oh, fascinating.
Legend. Absolute legend.
Yes.
Well, this has been absolutely delightful.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully I didn't go too long. I speak a lot.
The fact that you're still going strong here 2 hours in, that's amazing. I'm most impressed.
I got that nice break there because my internet decided to go to Belize for a minute. But yeah. No, it's like I said, I really enjoy these type of interactions. I enjoy getting to know people out there, and like the incredible things you see. You're so nice as far as talking about unscripted and inbox, and it's incredibly appreciated because it's a lot of work, but you know, that's what makes it really rewarding too when people connect with it. So
yeah, well, it's a lot of work, and we all appreciate it very much, man. Very, very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we appreciate having somebody that will do outreach and come from the organization and talk to us. It's fantastic. Almost everybody that we've mentioned on this show, Aaron, Sam, Jimmy, have all been on our show. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we've been going this is our second season, our 30. We go every week. We haven't missed a week, have we, Maddie?
No,
that's awesome.
87 shows, I think. But yeah, that's kind of why we're here, is just to kind of, Matt and I kind of met because we consume a lot of content, and I consume a lot of content outside of NFL too. I'm a big podcast. I like to listen to podcasts.
If you found Jimmy, I know you guys consume a lot of content. If you were able to find Jimmy's stuff.
Yeah, I've been gravitating more toward YouTube and video lately, but a lot of times I'm just listening to it. I'm just like I do a podcast.
I do the same thing.
But yeah, so it's really great. Because what we're trying to do is just say, well, this is the best of or the worst of usually it's the best of with us for the week. And that way, if somebody doesn't have time to listen or watch as much as we do, we can kind of point them to our favorites for the week.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's awesome. That is really super cool. And I appreciate you guys having me on. It was really nice chatting with you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. This was so great.
Any final thoughts for you, Maddie, before we sign off?
No, just, I can't thank you enough, Wes. This has been amazing. Especially for as much time as you gave us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, looking forward to it. I'm excited. This is a good time of the year. We're 1 week away from the NFL draft. This is when it gets fun again. So it's by the time especially doing inbox, by the time you get to the end of April and there's nothing going on, you're crawling through the desert there with that mirage, mirage and the thing of water and whatnot. That's kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm geared up to welcome some new players to this team. 25 open spots. See who fills them.
That's right.
And then camp is going to be right around the corner, and I can't believe it.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's as quickly as I always say that the fastest season for me is July 27th or whatever to when the season ends. That's 6 months. But then it is always incredible to me when I think about when a season ends to getting back to training camp.
Yeah,
it's the same window of time, but it's just incredible how quickly it all moves.
It does.
Yep.
And and I think I skipped one of my questions, that I really have an appreciation not just for the game and the team, but the organization and the business side and the law and all. I talk about the NFL law a lot on this show, or occasionally. And one of the questions I have here, and I'm so sorry, I just threw another question at you, but I just remembered it. I forgot. I don't know how I missed it. Was when you started working for a team, for an NFL team, right? What did you notice that was going on that you wouldn't have even thought of was going on to make that team run?
The amount of people that have to work in a collaborative manner to not necessarily keep the lights on. I don't want to be that dramatic about it, but to make all the pieces fit. You think Lambeau Field, you think the Packers organization, but then you get to meet the Gus Gustafsons of the world, the manager of basically all the facility, like events type stuff. If they set up, like, for example, the last 3 days we had the Phoenix Packers steak fry on, what's today, Thursday? On Tuesday, we had the Golden Apple Awards the next night. And then that machine just keeps running. We have amazing people in our events department that are responsible for scheduling all this stuff and making sure everything's set up. There is so many amazing people in this organization that don't get nearly enough credit, that are far more better at their jobs than I am. That are the people that make it work. And as much as I am kind of an outlier in terms of the media folks, that being able to stay here, be raised here, and then work here, there are so many amazing people that grew up in the Green Bay community that contribute to our finance department, our community outreach, that they just put everything that they have into this. And, you know, Hannah Gorel, for example, who also went to Bayport, a little bit younger than me, our events department. Hannah last off season when like some of the event stuff, she's a lot of the scheduling, but she was working weekends helping, you know, set up for events, you know, like that's the coolest part about it, because it's an NFL team, but yet there are still those community ties. And I think so much has been said and written about the Packers and in the corporate structure and National Football League and big business and everything, but there's still so many people that are from this community that grew up with this football team, that care about this football team, that want to see the Green Bay Packers held to the highest standard and are willing to put in whatever hours they have to do to make that happen. That is fun, because that makes you work harder when you feel like you have that purpose, and it pushes you. And it's incredible. It's incredible to be a part of. I don't know if that answers your question, but like, that's
really
kind of how I feel about it.
I didn't know what I would get from that question, but I had no idea, because I'm sure there's so much that goes into it. But I love that. I love that. And that you brought it back to the Green Bay community too, because that is what makes the Packers so.
And it's cool. Like, again, I'm sure this is the last thing that Russ Ball would want me to say, but like, you know, Russ is negotiating contracts, right? And he's the executive vice president of football and everything. The guy's sending me an email on my birthday to hope I had a good day. Like that kind of stuff. Like, I got promoted 2 weeks ago, right? I got elevated to senior writer. Awesome.
Congratulations.
Like my first promotion ever. And just the amount of people that reached out to say congratulations to me on that. Like, I worked in a really small environment at the Press Gazette. There was like 30 of us by the time I got done there. Yeah. And like, there's 300 people in the building at Lambeau. And like, I don't know everybody, but like, I do feel connected to everybody there. And that's super cool.
That is so special. I love that.
Congratulations on your promotion. Yeah. I was writing up the title for our show, and I was like, senior writer. I don't remember him being a senior writer.
I was a digital reporter 14 days ago.
Oh my gosh. I just didn't know if I didn't notice it or whatever. It kind of like clicked with me a little bit, but not enough to ask about it. That's
awesome. One of my I always wanted to be a senior writer. And I'm so like everyone, like Spofford kept telling me how young I am, but it's like, Michael, I've been doing this for 17 years. Yeah. At some point I wanted to be a senior writer, you know? So it's kind of cool that I finally got it. But anyway, but just the amount of people that were super awesome about it and congratulating me, like that's neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
People don't get to see that side of the organization. I wish they could, because there's a lot of amazing folks in there that aren't on press conference lecterns. They aren't necessarily seen every day, but they are what makes the ship run.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I love it. I'm glad I remembered the question, because I don't know how I missed it in my.
It probably happened when I went down for a second on the internet, and you had to like figure out how to kill time for me to get my AOL going again. So.
No, I love it, because you're giving our listeners, us and our listeners, a little glimpse, you know, of what most of us will never experience. So cool. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
It's a great bonus question, a great bonus answer.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Dawn, should I bring it home here?
Bring her home, Maddie.
All right. If you're still listening out there, thank you very much. You've caught a really great episode. I'm going to say I'm really proud of this one. Friends, make sure you're following Wes Hodkiewicz on Twitter, and that's at Wes Hod, WESHOD. Join the Hod Squad, people. And of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned, so please check it out. Whether you're a super fan or content creator, we'd love to have the chance to interview you. So if you're a subscriber, our DMs are open on Hey Willip on all the social platforms. We'd love to hear from you or someone you'd like to nominate to be a guest on our podcast this year. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, that's right, Maddie, because we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod, and we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.